The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
And welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday in the middle of July. I know many of you are having extreme heat issues, so hopefully you have curled up in some nice air-conditioned space and are in for the long haul with us. We'll pretend it's a snow day. How's that? Because it's anything but for most of the world today. But we are going to be with you for the next 3 hours live talking about topics having to do with autism and how we can be more effective, more efficient working with our children on the autism spectrum. Of course, we're going to talk about a lot of different things in the news, techniques that we can use, different things that can help us to manage our stress, because that's a big topic this week. But primarily, we talk about ABA here, Applied Behavior Analysis, because we know that that's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. So if you're wondering why that's our big topic, that's one of the big reasons right there. But also we talk about it as much as we do because it's a huge, huge area and our kids are all different, right? All of our kids are at different ages, different places on the spectrum, affected in different ways. Even if it's a child that's the same age as another child and they have the same general capabilities, there are different ways that they learn. So we want to be effective, we want to be efficient and we want to be child specific. We don't want to go at anything in a cookie cutter approach because we know that doesn't get the job done. But ABA has the potential to get the job done if we learn these tools and use them in a creative way for each individual child. And that is exciting, my friend. And, you know, you might think to yourself, okay, she's going to talk about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. First of all, it's going to be dry as dirt. Well, you know, sometimes it is, but we try to jazz it up a little here as much as we can, right? And I'm sorry, but I think that talking about our kids having progress, I think that's very exciting, really thrilling. And thinking of ways that we can be creative with these tools to help an individual child, that gets me going in the morning. But the other thing you might think is, oh, well, you know, Shannon's one of those ABA experts. Oh no, my friends, that is not the case. I am not an expert in ABA, not an expert in autism, not an expert in too terribly much except my child. And even then, I am clearly some days not an expert. Yesterday was one of those days. But I do have a child who was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5. And those were some really difficult days. My child had regressed into autism and lost virtually all of his skills, did not have functional communication skills for all intents and purposes. And we kind of so he was diagnosed at 2.5. We recognized there was a problem a couple of months before that. It took a while to get the diagnosis, right? And after we had the diagnosis, it took us another couple of months before we really understood what ABA was and got on a waiting list. So my son didn't start ABA therapy until 2 weeks after his 3rd birthday. And that was, looking back on it, my son graduated from his ABA program. He did 5 years of ABA, yes, 5 years in my house. And I can laugh about it. I not only survived it, I can laugh about it and say, woohoo, awfully glad I did that. And that as a family, we devoted our time and energies to that. So just know, if you're in the middle of it, you too are going to survive this and it's going to be worth it. But in any case, I look back at the whole period of time, and we have our own, you know, things that we go through now because life is life, right? But life is really good right now. And I think back to how difficult it was while we were going through ABA, and I'll still tell you that the most difficult time was that period of time before we started ABA, when we were figuring out Where did we go? What were we going to do? How are we going to get it funded? Was ABA the thing that we were going to do? That was the most difficult time, and waiting. Once we saw, okay, ABA is effective, and it's effective, by the way, for all of our kids. All of our kids are going to make progress. Yes, they're going to make different amounts of progress, but you know what? Progress is progress, right? So once we saw, okay, this is the thing, and then we had to wait a little while for it, because there is a period of ramping up and, procedures that need to be done and forms that need to be filled out, right? It always has to be that. And there are good reasons for it with ABA. But that, I can tell you, is the hardest time, because once you start ABA, not that it's all hearts and flowers and roses, it's a lot of work for you, a lot of work for your child, but when you see progress, the work gets easier. The work gets easier. So keep that in mind, and remember that that's how I come to you, as somebody who's passionate about it, somebody who has, in our own way, been there and done that. It's not going to be the same for you, and believe me, I know that. All of us are different. Our experiences are different. Our kids are different. Our wallets are different, right? I hope your wallet is flusher than mine was. But wherever you are, whatever's going on with you, I want to help you to help your child. Whether you're a parent, teacher, practitioner, does not matter to me. If you're working with a child on the autism spectrum, I want to help you to get the information that you need to be the most efficient, most effective person you can be working with that child. That's where I'm coming from. So, since I personally don't have the answers and I'm not an expert, what we do is I want to be the conduit to the experts. I'm hooked up with a whole bunch of experts that I can ask them a host of questions on your behalf. And you might ask yourself, all right, so how do I get you a question, Shannon? Good question. If you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, then you'll see that at the top of the screen, it either says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, and actually I'm seeing that it says streaming live. If it says that on your screen, then there's your questions box there, and you can type in whatever you want to, hit enter, and it appears magically right here on my screen. So you and I can be having a conversation that way. You can be having a conversation with an expert in the studio that way. We really appreciate it when you talk to us in that way. Now, if it says rebroadcast, then the your question box is not going to be active. So how do you get a hold of us then? Or how do you get a hold of us if you're watching us on any one of the other sites that we're available? Well, lots of different ways. So we're going to start to cycle through some of them. And by the way, just want to let you know that for the last week or so, we've been saying Matt's going to show them to you. Well, Emily is back from her vacazione. We're thrilled to have her back. And so it is, in fact, Emily who's pushing the buttons now. So there it is. Thank you, Emily. Welcome back. So there is the email address before you. And this is a great way to get a hold of us. You can send your email anytime, day or night, and it gets here to us. We'll cover your question on the next available live show, and we will send you a response, whether it's a video clip of when we answered your question or a typewritten response from an expert. One way or the other, we will get back to you. It does take us a little while because we're a little backed up at the moment, but that's a good thing to be. We're hoping to get an intern very soon who will help facilitate some of the correspondence things. You can also get a hold of us by calling. You can call directly into the studio and be talking to me and an expert. Or if you're shy and you don't want to do that, you can talk to somebody outside the studio, but there are people standing by to take your call. And if it's after hours, you can absolutely leave us a message and we will get back to you as soon as we're back in the office. By the way, you can also Skype into the live show. If you've got a video capability on your computer and you like the way your hair is looking, absolutely Skype in with us. We'll be happy to put you up on the screen with us and have a conversation directly with you and let the folks at home see you. If you don't have a camera, that's okay. We can do audio only. There's not a problem with that at all. But it's a great way for those of you who are watching internationally to be able to afford the phone call in a much easier techno-savvy way, right? So we love Skype. And you can also talk to us on Facebook. I know many of you who started joining us on our new Facebook page, Autism Live. We appreciate it if you like us while you're there and interact with us. And what's great about that is not only are you interacting with us, but you're interacting with each other. I love to see you guys support each other on Facebook. And you can also tweet with us. I'm slowly warming up to the tweet thing. I'm starting to see how much fun it is, and so we love it when you reinforce that and interact with us, and then I'll be that much happier to do it. I don't always know what I'm doing, and I'm not always tweet savvy, but I'm getting there. So thanks for being patient with me. By the way, I mentioned that there are lots of ways to watch us. You can be watching us on autism-live.com, or you could be watching us on Blip TV. What a great way to find a specific episode. You think to yourself, oh, I didn't watch last Thursday, and I know that Shannon was having Angela Persicki on, and they were talking about toilet training, and Angela was going to really tear it down, take it apart, and tell us how to do that. So you can find that. Just search the date, or search Angela Persicki, or you can search the topic toilet training and find all of the episodes that have the toilet training. You can also do that on YouTube. We have our very own YouTube channel, and we appreciate when you guys take a visit there. I know yesterday I got a little heated. I may have said that I thought it would be a good idea if Mr. 50 Cent donated 50 cents per person that follows him on Twitter. That would only be $4 million. I'm sure he has that laying around in his couch cushions, right? And I suggested that he take that $4 million and donate it to some very worthy autism charities. And I suggested a few of my favorites, but if you want to go and watch it on YouTube, please do, and make some suggestions for what charities you would like to see him give it to. Who knows? It could happen, right? In any case, you can watch us on YouTube. You can also download entire episodes for free on iTunes. How lovely is that? It's free, all the places that we are. And you can also catch our show on Ustream. So all of those lovely different ways in which you can watch our show. And if there's a way that you would like to see us that is not on that list, please do us a favor and let us know. In fact, anytime you have a suggestion for us, we love it. You want to suggest a topic? I know somebody wrote in last week and suggested that we have Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver, and so on Monday we had him. And you know what? It was great because I had never heard of Project Lifesaver before, and I just thought it was an amazing, amazing idea that they come into towns and cities and train law enforcement or organizations, whether it be fire or the sheriff or paramedics, on how to use this really specific radio frequency device to be able to track someone who has a bracelet, whether it be somebody with Alzheimer's or other difficulties, and of course autism for kids who elope. And they've had a 100% success rate, been able to find everybody that has had one of these bracelets, haven't had a single loss of life since they started, and it's very inexpensive for a community. I mean, like shockingly inexpensive. For them to come and give and train the responders is less than $4,000. Really kind of amazing. And the bracelets for the children, depending on if, because sometimes the cities are funding them, can be up to $300. And by the way, if you're listening to that and think, oh, I want one of those, but I can't afford the $300, then please apply for a grant on Autism Care and Treatment Today. They are in a grant phase right now. This is the organization that I was talking about yesterday that gives grants for the kinds of things that parents need. So you get to say what it is you want. You need an iPad for your child, you need a fence, you need one of these bracelets. Tell them at Act Today, fill out the paperwork. They have a waiting list, right? So please spread the word that Act Today could use some of 50 Cent's money or someone else's. How far could $4 million go? Woo! I get giddy thinking about it, right? And again, I just think he probably has that laying around in his couch cushions, right? He's a very successful rapper. I know he was just celebrating his 37th birthday in Paris with a lot of Dom Perignon champagne. So, you know, $4 million, just write the check. That's how you make that apology work, Mr. 50 Cent. All right, I digress. But please write into us, give us your suggestions, because we always are listening. That's the one thing that we get right, is that we listen. And we want to keep it that way. Hey, we like to start every morning with something called the jargon of the day. The jargon of the day is when we take on one word, one phrase, one anagram, and we try to make heads or tails out of it. And we know that this is a jargon-intensive journey, right? And that at some point you're going to be talking to somebody about stuff that's super duper important to you about your child, and you're going to ask them a question, and they are going to respond with a bunch of words that sound like gobbledygook, and you're going to, mench it up and say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, and then they're going to throw some more gobbledygook at you, right? It's disheartening. It's frustrating. It makes my head twirl. I love words. I absolutely love words, and I love the idea of jargon, but man, when your child needs help and you are seeing challenging behavior and you are overwhelmed and underslept, that is not the moment that you'll have jargon, right? But we still have to make friends with it. It's what's going to help us, one of the many things that's going to help us to be more effective, more efficient with our kids. It's going to save us money too, because at some point you're going to need to consult with experts, and you want to get the most out of that meeting. And if you're sitting there with a dictionary looking up terms or asking the person to please define what they just said, it's going to cost you more and you're going to get less done. So we're making friends with the jargon a little bit at a time. So our term today, and this is something we talk about a lot here, is generalization. What is generalization, and why is it so important to all of us? Well, let's take a look at our actual definition. Generalization is the occurrence of relevant behavior under different non-training conditions, i.e. across subjects, settings, people, behaviors, and/or time, without the scheduling of the same events in those conditions. What? Let's go to our working definition. Being able to apply what has been learned in new ways or situations that were never taught. So one of the things that we say to you here all the time is that we have to plan for generalization from step one. And if you are lucky enough to be having ABA services right now because you have insurance reform or you have a funding agency that's paying for that, and you say to yourself, oh, I'm finally in the zone. I've got an ABA provider. My kid's going to get help. Everything is wonderful. And then you think to yourself, how do I know that this ABA provider is good? We talk about the difference between a really good ABA provider and somebody who is not, because unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that they're all brilliant, right? But unfortunately, we've seen some circumstances where people were not properly trained, or heaven forbid, lying about their credentials, right? We got to be diligent as parents and make sure that the people are who they say they are, and check. There's a website, and I'll get it for you in a little while, where we can check to see whether they really are a board-certified behavior analyst, right? They can't just make it up. You can check on this website, and I'll get it for you. But in any case, another way that we can see if our ABA provider is really on the job and doing things the way they should be, first of all, our child should be thrilled when the therapists come to the door and not trying to hide under the bed. And second, we should hear them talking about generalization every time they start a lesson. Every time they start a new skill and target a behavior, we should hear how we're going to generalize it. If you're not hearing them talk about it, ask about it. Say, how are we planning for generalization? And that's one of those things, it's one of those questions that to you or I, it's like, I don't know how we're planning for generalization, right? Especially in the beginning. But for anybody who's on the job ABA, they should be able to go boom, 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 and know it cold. It isn't something that requires a great deal of thought if they're doing it properly. So really good litmus test. Okay, so being able to apply what has been learned in new ways or situations that were never taught. When we sit down to teach a child a skill, we're probably going to, at some point, do some DTT with them, discrete trial teaching, where we're going to set up these very specific circumstances that are in this little bubble where we're going to do something. We hope that we're going to see the behavior, and when we see the behavior, we're going to reinforce it, right? Because nobody does nobody does any behavior on a regular basis unless it's reinforced. And this is how we're going to teach a new skill to a child a lot of times. We're not going to just do DTT with them, right? We're eventually going to use it in the natural environment, do natural environment training. We might do some precision training with it. We're going to do some fluency training with it. We're going to do a lot of different things with this skill because we don't want the child to just parrot it, right? Isn't that the thing that sometimes we're told about ABA? People go, oh, they're just teaching those kids to parrot. No, not if it's good ABA, not at all. I always go back to my mother teaching me how to drive. because my mother knew about generalization. She didn't know she knew about generalization, but she did. So my mother taught me how to drive, and she didn't take me out in the car the first time. She didn't. That was too scary. I was a little flighty. I can't imagine. But she set up a fake car in our home and said, this can of corn and this can of peas, this is the gas and this is the brake, and and I had my fake steering wheel and imagining my rear view mirrors, and we went over some of the rules of the road, and I got to practice with the peas and the corn before I ever went anywhere, right? But then eventually she took me out to the car. She had this plan of how she was going to teach me how to drive. And it was important to my mother that at some point she was going to be able to go hands off, and that I was going to know how to drive. And I wasn't just going to know how to drive one car. I was going to know how to drive any car, whether it was stick or standard or whatever, whether it was a big Mack truck or it was a little Chevette back in those days. I was going to understand how to gauge where the edge of the road was, no matter how big the car was or how small the car was. That I was going to know how to do a three-point turn if I was on a busy highway and had to do an emergency three-point turn, which I hope no one ever has to do, or I was on a dirt country road or on gravel, which is different circumstances, right? I was going to understand how to respond no matter what circumstance on what road. And that's what she wanted for me to know, how to drive in all circumstances. Now, could she possibly teach me all of those things? No, because you can't. There's too many circumstances. My goodness, I drove to work today and met circumstances that I've never had any time in my life. But I applied the rules of the road, all the things that she taught me, in a way because she made sure that from minute one that she wasn't just teaching me how to drive her car, she was setting me up to be able to drive any car on any road at any time in any circumstances. We need to do that with every single thing that we teach. We're teaching it in a really global sense, hoping that at some point the child makes the leap and makes that skill completely their own and understands how to apply the tools that we gave them in new situations, at new times, in new ways. Think about toileting. When you teach toileting, you're so concerned about the diaper, right? But you're not just trying to teach your child how to poop in your potty. You're trying to teach your child how to poop in any potty, right? And this is a common mistake that people make when they're toilet training, because they're so focused on, I want to get rid of the diaper, I want to have success, I want to have the freedom, I want to, that they really focus on teaching, and it's easier, right? If you're doing it at home and you don't have to deal with all the distractions. Well, yeah, you want to start in the home, but fairly quickly, before it gets set in stone that this is going to the bathroom and it means this toilet, you got to take your kid over to Aunt Martha's house and have your little girl poop in Aunt Martha's toilet. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it's what works. You don't want to be one of the parents and I know there are some of you out there that go, my child's toilet trained, but, we try to go on vacation and he holds on to his bowels and won't go because he won't go in the hotel bathroom. Well, you can fix that. You can fix that. It's going to be time consuming to fix that, but it is fixable. But imagine if you had planned from the beginning when you were teaching that toilet training how to have the child generalize toileting skills to absolutely any toilet. And how would you do that? Well, the same way that my mother taught me how to drive. First do it in this very controlled environment, then take it into the natural environment, right, with one car. But then she had me drive my dad's car, and then she had me drive my sister's car, and then she asked the neighbor if we could borrow their car once I'd gotten better at it, right? She didn't allow me to just get comfortable in one circumstance. And she would take me driving in the morning, and she would take me driving in the afternoon. She would take me for a long time. We were in a parking lot, and then eventually we were on country roads, and then we were on suburban roads, and then she took me driving in the city, and eventually she took me driving on the freeway, right? And then the day had to come when she went, all right, you're on your own. But it was a process that we worked up to hugely. So you can do that with your child with every single skill, and your ABA provider needs to be doing that. And from minute one, it's included in the notes for the lesson. It's got to be there. If you got your child's book, go and look. What are the plans for generalization? If they're not planning for generalization, you run the risk of having a child who just parrots. That's not what you want. That's not what I want. And by the way, that's not what ABA does. Fire that ABA provider if you say, hey, how are we planning for generalization on this skill? And they go, don't wait around. Done. Get rid of them. I know that's harsh, but don't waste valuable time. We've been talking the last 2 weeks about how important it is for early intensive behavior intervention, right? Early. What does early mean? Now. Don't waste a year with an ABA provider who is not getting the job done. You're going to see a lot of more ABA providers springing up in different places as this insurance reform really takes hold. So you're going to be able to make choices. But also what we're going to see, unfortunately, I'm afeared, is that as insurance providers say, well, here is who we vendor with. Make sure that they're doing a good job and don't just accept it. Petition the insurance company and say they're not doing a good job and here's why they're not doing a good job. Insurance companies are going to listen to that because, hey, the insurance companies want it to be effective, right? Or it's going to cost them more money. So don't be a shrinking violet. Speak up. Okay. That's generalization. And generalization is wonderful. When your child, the first time that you see your child, without being prompted in a new circumstance, do something that you've been teaching them for a long time and they demonstrate that they got it, it's just so wonderful. It's very exciting. Generalization. It's a good thing we want to plan for it. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. We've asked a lot of fun things, but it's time to ask some of the not so fun things. And we've been talking about managing stress all week. I want to know, what are you most worried about? What's the thing that when everything else calms down and you finally have gotten your child to sleep and you're laying there on the bed and you're about to drift off, what's the thing that's eating at you, that the niggling worry? What is it? Let's get it out in the open. Let's talk about if there's anything that we can do about it, because sometimes when you bring it out and go, okay, here's the thing that's kicking my can, and then your brain says, all right, well, what can I do about that, right? The executive function, the problem solving, saying, all right, what can I do about that? And sometimes you go, there's not a bloody blessed thing I can do about that, and that's when you have to move into acceptance, right? But there are other things that you go, well, I could be doing this, and how difficult would that be? And chances are that whatever it is and how difficult it is, it's easier to deal with than the worry. When we worry, sometimes if we can get into action or get into an acceptance, either way, it makes it better. It really does. Okay, so I want you to write in and tell us, what are you most worried about? You can write in on our Facebook. You can also tweet it to us. You can write in, you can email. Lots of different things. You can phone in if you want to. Or if you're watching us live on Autism-Live, now is a good time to just write it in the question, what are you worried the most about? All right, we also always have a topic of the day, and of course I've already given it away. Our topic this week is managing stress. Oh, everybody take a breath, right? Because we just go and go and go and climb and climb and climb, and sometimes we just forget to take a moment. We can all take a moment. We've been talking about this, that sometimes even just that moment when we get in the car to go somewhere, and I know it's always like rush to get in the car, and it's always the most difficult thing, getting your child out the door, negotiating all that, getting them up into the car, figuring out what you have to have packed to be successful to go wherever it is you're going, and you get your child strapped into the car seat. That's an ideal time to take 30 seconds or a minute and just breathe and center. You know what? You might be a minute later to OT or to speech or whatever it is that you're going, but ultimately that minute of peace and surrender is going to help you to make sure that your child gets to that appointment more often. It's worth it. I'm not saying take 10 minutes in that moment, but if you can take 10 minutes another time, work your way up to it. But we're going to talk about managing stress. We got a lot of different things that we're going to talk about today. It's Wednesday, and on Wednesday, it's usually this packed end-to-end, and it's going to be packed end-to-end today too. But it's a little bit wonky today because it's the summer, and there's different schedules and different things, and frankly, some emergencies that came up today. So our schedule for today, we are going to have a play tip here in just a few minutes. Want to let you know that unfortunately we aren't going to be joined by Evelyn Gould today. She's been called away. So instead we're going to talk about challenging behavior, because I don't think we can ever talk about it enough, about how there are ways we can change challenging behavior. So we're going to be talking about that. And then during the 11 o'clock hour, we will be doing Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Unfortunately, we won't be joined by Nancy Allspaw Jackson because she's had a family emergency and has been called away. And our thoughts and prayers are absolutely with her and her family at this time. But we do have an interview that Nancy and I did with filmmaker Vena Tiero, wonderful woman who has 2 sons on the autism spectrum, a single mom who makes it work and has found the time somehow to make a documentary out of the home movies that she has done of her 2 boys. The documentary is called My Tiero Boys, and it's so amazing. I got to see it a few months ago, and Vena is one of those people who there is no pretense about her, she is just painfully honest, and I have to say that it's breathtaking how honest she is, because it's not always pretty, right? And she is a filmmaker, and so she took a lot of videos of her kids, and I think so often those of us who have children on the autism spectrum, people will say, well, where's the video? I don't see it. I don't see the behavior, and where's the video of the behavior? And so many of us say, well, I was busy trying to save my life and not videotaping it, right? It didn't occur to me to pick up a camera so that I could prove to you that my child was throwing himself on the floor and beating his head against the kitchen floor. I was busy having a nervous breakdown when that was happening, and I didn't just pick up the video camera. But some people that is their life, having that video camera, and that it's always there and it is always their first thought. And of course, Vena did not jeopardize her children's safety in order to videotape, but she got a lot of things on videotape that I think a lot of us wouldn't have taken the time to, but it's beautiful and poignant and moving and challenging. It's a lovely, lovely film. So we're going to have the interview with Vena during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So it's almost like Nancy's here. And it should promise to be a really wonderful day. We've got a lot of different things to bring you and talk about. So stick with us. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have our play tip of the week. Stick with us. Hi, I'm here with Sue Cho. And Sue, tell the folks at home what exactly it is that you do.
I'm a senior clinical supervisor, and so I provide supervision and consultation for kids in clinics. I also am a trainer within the training department, and so supervisors go through a training process through our corporate office, and I'm a part of that training team, and making sure that they're getting the proper support and learning the things that they need to be a successful supervisor. And I also provide workshop services for children that don't have access to a card site. And so I see children all over North America, the Caribbean, Asia, Europe, and South Africa.
So today I've asked you to come here and talk to us about getting our kids to recognize their own emotions. When do we begin to work with them on recognizing their own emotions?
We typically start to teach emotional recognition after they've been able to identify it in other people first. When it comes to your own emotions, it's more difficult for our kids to realize how they may feel. They can't see their own emotions, which is why it's especially difficult for them to recognize. So often we'll first teach them how to imitate what the facial expression might look like, and then we can show them in a mirror, or I might say to them, show me sad, and the child will show me their sad face. And then I might ask them, how do you feel? While they're making the sad face, over time we teach them how to recognize what their body feels like when they are experiencing a certain emotion. For example, if I give them a present, I can say, how do you feel? And they can say, I'm happy in the moment, rather than me telling them how they feel.
Right.
They are also taught coping skills on what to do when they experience certain emotions. So for example, the child's typical reaction when they're happy might be to flap their hands. I can then teach them to say, wow, this is cool, I love this, this is awesome, so that they're showing other people how they feel in a more socially appropriate way. We have to teach them strategies of what to do when they feel a certain way. So for example, if my child is angry, rather than just saying I'm angry, what are some other things that we can do for them to release their anger? That is a socially appropriate way too. If the child's typical response is to be aggressive when they're angry, we can teach them strategies like taking deep breaths, or teaching them other alternatives to say, for example, after we do this activity, can we go to the park? So that it's not just, you will tolerate this and you will just learn to deal with it. We have to teach them other strategies. We want to teach them skills that they can do on their own, because if we're also teaching them skills that always require someone else to administer them, it also doesn't make them independent.
Right.
So it's important to teach them to recognize and then what to do if that is occurring.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and it's that time of the week when we take on the play tip. Want to remind you that one of the most important things we got to remember, and this was so hard for me in the beginning, and I still have to be reminded on a regular basis. I want to tattoo it to my forehead, but we can't assume that because something is reinforcing to a whole bunch of people, whether it's us or a bunch of other kids, that it's automatically going to be reinforcing to our kids. Oh, it's just the easiest thing to fall into, right? And it doesn't go away, you know, after they're 4 years old. I see that my son is 9, and I still will assume, okay, well, you know, 9-year-old boys like this and so. But there are a lot of things that other kids would like that he just isn't into, and I can't assume. For instance, you know, my mother will always come and visit, and my mother assumes that at some point, I think she's given up the assumption, but she always for the longest time assumed that at some point my son was really going to be into ice cream, because ice cream is one of the big treats in life, right? Except that even when my son, you know, and he's on a very specific diet where he doesn't have sugar and he doesn't have milk products, but because that's what's right for his little ecosystem. But you know, even times in his life when he was offered ice cream, he spit it out because he didn't like things that were cold and creamy. He just didn't like the flavor of it. And that's pretty much, you know, I think who he's going to be. It isn't reinforcing to him. That's hard for my mom to get a big grasp on because ice cream is fabulous, right? So how could he not love it? Well, this is particularly true with play. We so often assume, well, kids like to play. Kids love to play. Kids know how to play. Kids find it reinforcing, right? No. In fact, for a lot of our kids, especially when they're very young, they just don't find it reinforcing. Now, some of it, it's, you know, a whole other spectrum, right? Some of them are like, well, you know, it's just not interesting. It's boring. Well, it's nothing, right? It's a non-thing. You know, I could take it, I could leave it. It's not really fun for me, so I'm not going to make an effort to do it, right? And for other kids, it is flat out aversive. It's just, especially certain kinds of play, and it's painful to them. It's sensory nightmare for them. And stop and think, this isn't such a huge leap in thought, because we all have things that we like and that we don't like, right? I have friends who ski. They love to ski. It's expensive. You have to be in the cold. You got to ride a chairlift, so there's heights involved. And then you're going in high speeds on these two little sticks that require balance, and you can hit a tree or fall into the snow, which, by the way, is cold. I ask you, what is reinforcing about this sport? I have no idea. It involves everything that I don't like. If there was an elevator, it would be the supreme not me thing to do. Right? I don't get it at all. And yet I know people who live and breathe to be able to get to the mountaintop and ski. Okay, that's your deal. My deal, entirely different. I not only do not find it reinforcing, it's aversive to me. Absolutely aversive. So, and we accept that in adults, right? Oh, it's just not your thing. You don't like it? Okay, well, and we might go, really? How can you not love that? Well, because I don't. Just how we're all different. We're just all wired in different ways. Our kids are too. And it's really interesting that things that a lot of kids would like, our kids don't or find aversive. So what can we do about that? We talked about this yesterday, condition reinforcer. We find the skills that we want the child to get through play, and we're going to pair playing with other things that we know to be reinforcing. The child loves potato chips. We're going to pair playing with potato chips, and we're going to pair it, and we're going to pair it, and we're going to pair it. Right? And we're also going to pair it with praise, so that eventually we can remove the potato chip and we're praising and praising and praising. And now the child finds the praise reinforcing because it went with the potato chip, and now they're going to find the play reinforcing. We can make play reinforcing. And there are lots of reasons why we want to make play reinforcing, because children gain skills in a way that's very unique in play. We can work on a whole lot of things within play that help in so many other areas, but also it's a life skill. It helps with managing stress, right? If they've got something to occupy themselves with that is fun for them. And in the beginning, it's not fun, but we can make it fun in the long run. Also, one of the things that we hear, and this is what I want to talk about today, independent play. We hear from parents all the time, and I know I still feel this, is that you feel guilty if you let your child have a moment where you're not making it a teaching moment, right? We're going to watch The A Word in a little while, and one of the early episodes, the dad said, sometimes I'm so overwhelmed that I want to sit down and watch a football game, and I just, he's got something over there that he's obsessing about or whatever, and I'll sit and I'll watch 10 minutes of a football game, and I feel like a criminal because I could have been trying to interact with him and I could have been trying to teach him. Such a poignant moment, because I think most parents, we feel that, and it's just like, oh, yeah, you're singing my song. But the reality is that we can't be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if there's this wonderful mix of that, if we teach a child to play independently, which is a very important skill and they need to have for the rest of their lives, then we can set them up sometimes so that they're playing independently. We can feel good about the fact that they're actually having a teaching moment. It just happens to be that the teaching moment is them playing independently, and then we get to go to the bathroom for the first time in 3 years, right? Without somebody in the bathroom with us. We get to be able to cook dinner and not be interrupted 32 times and burn it. We get to sit and watch 10 minutes of a football game and not feel like a criminal. And we're setting our child up for success, because when they can play independently, they're going to be able to do other things in life. We don't want to have a child who has to constantly have stimulation come from other places, right? That's not a good way to be. So we want a child who can pick up a toy and play. We want a child who finds that reinforcing, and that can make the decision to put that toy down and go play with another toy. If your child currently isn't able to do that, don't panic, because you can teach your child to find that reinforcing. And summer's a really good time to do it, by the way, too, because we tend to have more time with our children because they have less services. One of the things that we've talked about before on the show, especially if your children are visual and respond to a visual schedule, this is really great for kids who don't have great receptive language yet, is that you can make a schedule and you can put however many boxes into it as you want. But you know, I'm envisioning one that has 4 little boxes on it, and so you can say, okay, you know, first you're going to go and play with the dolls, and second you're going to go and play with a little kitchenette, and it's got a little picture or drawing of the kitchenette. You can use your instant, you know, your digital camera and get a little picture and shrink it down into little squares. So first you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to play with, I don't know, a video game thing. And then last, you're going to sit down and have a tea party with your teddy bears. Probably a female child that we've set this up for, right? Not necessarily, though. Don't want to assume. But and you can set a timer. What this is going to help your child to do, and you're going to offer reinforcement for when the child leaves one toy independently and goes to the other toy. So we're teaching transitioning, we're teaching playing independently, we're teaching the ability to leave one toy, go to another toy, and that nothing bad happens, right? And we're going to start out by giving the child, let's say we've got figures, whether it's Barbie dolls or it's little, I don't know, Ninja Turtles, or I'm trying to think what the Ben 10. That has a lot of figures right now, and that's a pretty popular thing. Or I guess the Avengers have their little figures now too. So maybe we start out playing with the toys and we model the behavior for the child, and we, have little conversations between the two of them, and then we start interacting with the child. So now they're interacting with the little figure, and we go up and say, "Hey, I want to kick this ball," and we kick the ball with it, and show them some different ways in which we would play with the figures, and think about what we think they might like, right? My son what he liked to play with was he would stack blocks as high as he could get them and then knock them down. He loved that. So when we wanted him to get into figures, we would stack up the blocks, and then the figure would go, "I'm going to go over and knock the blocks down," and knock them down. He thought that was hilarious. So then he wanted to, do the figures and go over, and he didn't have words, but he would walk over and go, right? But eventually I was able to fade back after prompting him, and he would stack the blocks and have the figures and do all kinds of things with them, right? So you're teaching them to play independently, to be creative, and eventually, in the beginning, your child might just mimic you. Well, that's okay. That's a skill too, mimicking what you're doing. But again, given enough time, your child will start to improvise. They start to generalize how to play independently with toys and put their individual preferences on it. It's a very exciting thing for the children to be able to play independently. It's good for them. Yeah, we don't want them to play independently for hours on end because we want to have that interaction. But it's not the worst thing in the world for them to be able to play for 10 minutes at a time by themselves to entertain themselves. It's actually a really good thing, and it is something that we can do over the summer. Hey, by the way, if you're thinking to yourself, I need this structured a little more. I like this idea, Shannon, but I need this structured a little more. How can I learn more about this? I will tell you quite honestly that we use the Skills program at home. You can go to skillsglobal.com and find out all about it. It has all of the lessons that we talk about here in a very easy to read format with teaching points. It helps you to assess which lessons your child should be working on at what point, so that you're not wasting time. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and they have a great summer special going on right now, so that's at skillsglobal.com, and we use that at home. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to give you some information about some insurance seminars, if you're in the state of California, that you can attend for free, and we're also going to have a team building tip about how to give constructive criticism when somebody on your team isn't getting the job done. Stick with us.
am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're going to be talking about how we can give constructive criticism in just a second to people working on our child's team. But I want to remind you, if you're in the state of California, we now have, woohoo, insurance reform. It took effect on July 1st. So we're in the second week. And I'd love to hear from you guys who are in California how it's working for you. If you notice anything different, if you notice, you know, that you've already made the shift or you're still in the transition, love to hear from you how it's going for you. Want to remind you also, though, that there are some seminars, free seminars coming up hosted by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So you got a pencil and a piece of paper? Here we go. On Saturday, July 28th, if you are in Fresno, again in Fresno, that's Saturday, July 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Fresno, California at the Clinton Way office for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, Saturday, July 28th in Fresno. How about if you're in Sacramento? Those of you in Sacramento, Friday, August 3rd from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's a Friday night, 6 p.m., 8 to 8 p.m. in Sacramento at the card office on Ramco Street. You can find all of these locations, by the way, at www.centerforautism.com. And the dates, I believe, are there as well. How about in Lafayette, California, Saturday, August 4th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Saturday, August 4th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. in Lafayette, California. Then in Garden Grove, Saturday, August August 11th for Garden Grove from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. At the Lewis Street office. Again, that's Garden Grove, Saturday, August 11th. How about here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California, Saturday, August 18th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., Saturday, August 18th, right here in the building from which we webcast from. And if you want, when you come to the seminar, you can say, hey, we want to see the studio. Show us the studio. I'm sure they'll be happy to show that to you. Okay, how about in San Diego? For those of you in San Diego, that's Saturday, August 25th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the card office on Ronson Road. Again, San Diego, that's Saturday, August 25th. I hope that you will go to those free seminars that are going to give you more information about California insurance funding for autism. If you have questions, I can't imagine a better place to be than one of those events. And of course, if you can't wait until then, we are taking all of your questions as well, and we'll help to field them. But I really encourage you to go to those seminars. You'll learn a lot. I know that Bryce Myler is going to be attending those, and she's awesome. She's absolutely awesome. She is a force to be reckoned with, and I've told you guys before, she's an autism mom. Her son recovered. There is nobody better in the field to have fighting the good fight for you in terms of insurance. So check those out. I'm just checking here until just seeing if we have anything new. All right, we try to keep a bead on so many different things. I got to go back and forth between my pages here. But wanted to take a minute to talk about creating a therapy team and tips for success. You know, once you make the decision to do ABA therapy, applied behavior analysis, you've got some decisions to make, and usually you want to check and see what your funding source is, right? And you want to see, do you have ABA providers where you live? And in some of the cases, you guys absolutely do. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing when you do. I always encourage you to go first to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders webpage, that same place we were just talking about, www.centerforautism.com. Go to the locations tab and see if there is an office close by you. It's a great place to start. Now, if you are lucky and there is, then I would encourage you, and of course I am biased because they gave me my child back. So of course I'm going to tell you, you know, they're awesome. And I know 100% for sure that they do a great job. But you may not be close enough to one of those offices, and there are other offices. Well, great. That's wonderful, and you can contact those offices and talk to them about what the funding choices are in the state and see if they can help you to figure out how you're going to get funding, right? Sometimes they have information, sometimes they don't. If you look around and you say, well, where is the closest ABA provider, and it is somebody that is 3, 4, 5, 6 hours away, then you got to make some choices, right? And you have to make choices that work for you and your family. But thank goodness there are choices now, because for the longest time, it was just a circumstance that if you were that far away, it was like, well, sorry, you're not going to get services. Want to make you aware of like 3 different scenarios that you can pick from, kind of 4. There's a hybrid. But in the one circumstance, you have an ABA provider, and they are going to staff your team of people that are going to come to your door, and they're going to train them, and they're going to make decisions about your child's progress. They're going to be responsible for charting all of that, for assessing what lessons the child needs to learn next, for writing those lessons for them, and making decisions along the way about how best to serve your child. Now, that's what I had the benefit of with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders in my home. And I did not have that because I was wealthy, because I wasn't. I had that because the state of California paid for that. I just want to be 100% honest with you. And even then, it was still financially devastating because I had to leave work. The rule was, you know, you could have this in the home, but somebody had to be home while it was happening, right? And that became moi. So it was still a financial hardship, and I want you to know that. but a blessed one, because he got the treatment. We found a way to make it work. It was not easy, but we did. And I know some of you go, oh, if I don't work, we're not going to make it. Yeah, I know. We said the same thing, and you find a way. You absolutely find a way. But in any case, I think that that's the best possible circumstance for anyone, that you have somebody who's training the team, you've got somebody else who's really shining the flashlight and saying, here's where we're going, because you are overwhelmed enough that it's hard to make the decisions and to get yourself up to speed. It absolutely is. So best case scenario is that you have that. But you know what? You can't always. And if you live too far from an ABA provider, then that's not going to happen. So the middle choice is something called the workshop model. And the workshop model means that you're still going through an ABA provider, but they're so far away that they're just going to drop in on a regular basis, kind of like the super nanny, right? They're going to come in, they're going to train you, they're also going to train your staff, and they're going to go away and come back and check in and go away and come back. But it's only one person who's coming and going, and it can be very expensive. Now, some of your insurance covers that, depending on where you are. Because, you know, if you have insurance, they have to be able to provide for what you need. And if there's not a provider, then they're going to do the workshop model. You're going to have more responsibility because you have to hire the team. And you're going to be instrumental in making sure that the team is following through on a daily basis. The supervisor is somebody who's going to monitor things and offer suggestions, but you have much more of a responsibility when you're in the workshop model. And there are lots of parents who've been very successful within the workshop model, very successful at managing all of it, managing the stress, managing the scheduling, managing the hiring, the firing. And keep in mind that in all of the cases over the years that have had the workshop model, they did not all have insurance, and a lot of them had a team of volunteers where they didn't pay anyone to work with their child, but they trained volunteers. So that is very doable. You would not be the first person. You wouldn't have to invent that wheel. And still, you have to manage people, right? And of course, the third scenario is when money and time and space does not accommodate either one of the other two, and you say, you know what? Not only are we not going to be able to have somebody else staff the team for us, we're going to have to staff it ourselves, but we also are not going to be able to pay for somebody to come and visit on a regular basis. And so you're going to go at your own. Really recommend Cardi Learning and Skills. In fact, in just a minute, we'll show you the Maddie video, a family who said, we don't have access to these other things, so we're going to do it with Cardi Learning and with Skills and with volunteers from our church, and we're going to make this happen. And they did. It's a lot for a parent, and please know that nobody is saying, oh, and it's just easy, right? But it's possible. And when you've got no other choice, it's a great solution. If I could grant you anything, if I could wish and make it so, I would give you what I had. And I hope that with insurance reform that more and more of you are going to be eligible for that. But I am able to sleep at night knowing that if that isn't available to you, you at least have the option to do Cardi Learning and Skills, so your child no longer has to be left out. And if you're sitting there and saying, well, there is a cost with Cardi Learning and with Skills, yes, it is significantly smaller, but if it is still out of reach for you, please, please apply for a grant from ACT today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, because they love to give grants for things that help to bring ABA in the home and get you trained and help to train your staff. They love to give grants for that. I know that for a fact. Okay, so if you're in either of the other two scenarios, then you have to manage this team. And I'll be honest with you, even when you have the ABA provider giving the team, every person who comes into your home is not necessarily going to jive with you. And there are going to be times when you have to give constructive criticism to your therapy team. It's not easy, right? Because these are people who are given their all. Sometimes they're being paid, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're volunteers. But in any case, they've come to your door, hopefully with the best of intentions of helping your child. So there's that thing of, well, I don't want to tell them they're not doing it right? But it is not your job to be the nicest person on the face of the earth. It is your job to be the most effective, most efficient member of your child's team. So to that end, you also don't want to be the person who's always cracking the whip and going, you're doing it wrong, because that's not reinforcing to your team. So how do we find the happy mix of giving constructive criticism? And you know, fortunately, we have families over the years who have said and had success and have said, here's what worked for us. Some of them have reported that they regularly videotape sessions with therapists, whether they're new or old, and then kind of like a football coach, review the tape with them. It's so much easier, I think, you know, and we had opportunity to do this as well, when somebody looks back on the tape and they can clearly see what they're doing and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that. And then it doesn't have to be this whole discussion and, you know, you saying you did this and them saying I don't think I did, right? It just, you know, here's what happened, here's what you did. And by the way, these aren't necessarily big, huge things, but very finite things making a difference. It could be as simple as when they ask your child to do something, delaying too long to give reinforcement, right? That's a little bit of a rookie mistake, and I tend to still make that mistake, so I guess I'm still a rookie. We've been talking about that with my son lately because we're trying to train our dog, and my son asks the dog to do something, and he's got the dog biscuit that's the reinforcer right there, but he just waits. And I'm always saying to him, hurry, hurry, as quick as possible, give it to her, so that she thinks that it's because of these same things. It's hard though. It's hard to get in the swing of that. And sometimes for therapists, you're going to have to say, you know, count how many seconds before you give the reinforcement. It's crystal clear when you've got videotape. I think, and actually we've been told this by parents, is that starting out with saying what the therapist is doing right is usually a better way to begin the conversation than to say what they're doing wrong. So you praise them first and say, you know, love the way you're doing X, Y, and Z. This is absolutely fabulous, truly wonderful. I'd love to have you show some of the other therapists when you did this, da 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 da. Here are some things that we'd like for you to work on, right? And then it's couched in the, you're doing a lot right and you're going to get less defensiveness. And honestly, if you see that someone is being defensive on a regular basis after you've tried these different things, showing them video of themselves, giving them praise for what they're doing right, and they're still being defensive, that's somebody you want to think about how pivotal are they for your team. Because to really have a rock star therapist, it's got to be somebody who's willing to put aside their personal issues and make it about your child. And you don't want to be in a constant battle back and forth. You know, I'm thinking about, I watched the Glee Project last night. I didn't watch it in season 1. I'm watching it in season 2. And there's one very talented young man on the show who has been doing mostly really good work. And, you know, he got eliminated, but every time they give him a comment, he has an excuse, right? And they finally said, nice knowing you. And I think most people don't want to hear that. You know, you have to be able to take constructive criticism and make sure it's constructive, that you're clear about your criticism, about what you want to see, what timeline you want to see it on, that you understand that there are difficulties with it, but that you give clear expectations and then do give them some time. But if you're constantly getting excuses and people saying, I didn't do that, you know, end it sooner as opposed to later. You will be able to find somebody else. Life will go on, and it will help you to ratchet down your stress. Because you don't need a disgruntled employee who's not doing it properly, right? That's the last thing you need on your plate. Clear expectations, letting them know what they're doing right, telling them what they did that needs to be worked on, and when you expect to happen it. Showing them videotape, really key to helping them to be the best they can be, and they should want that. Okay, it is time for the A word. This is the wonderful documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders about a little boy, Jack Riley. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He has now, in this week's episode, turned 3. He's a remarkable little boy who's made tremendous progress using ABA. It hasn't all been easy, right? But we tune in and see some of the different things that he's working on. This is the A word.
sun's coming up.
How do you spell apple? Jack?
A-P-P-L-E.
We went to the mall last night and got him some new shoes, and he rode the carousel, and I watched him for like a half hour, and you would never guess he wasn't like every other kid in there, except he was smaller than a lot of them. They run around with
That's so funny.
reckless abandon.
It's so funny.
That's so funny.
Hey, what color do you want? Look, I have green, yellow, and pink. What color?
Yellow.
So what do you say?
Yellow.
Yes, you can. Close. There we go. Oh! Uh-oh! Should we make him stand? Should we make him jump? Here, let's make him jump. Ready? Boink! Uh-oh! Look! What is that? See, it's a footprint.
It's a footprint.
It's a footprint. Cool, you want to do it again?
Take it.
While Jessica and Jack Riley are playing with Play-Doh, they are working on his fine motor skills. They include pincher grasp for picking up food, rotating the wrist for closing and opening the door. Having fine motor skills are needed for daily living tasks.
Oh, coolness. Wow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Whose birthday is it? Say it's my
birthday.
Say birthday.
Birthday.
Say
it's my birthday. It's my birthday.
Yeah. How old are you? I'm
3.
Yep, you're 3. Do this. Say 3. 1, 2. Look. 3 fingers. Look. Right here. Look. 1, 2, 3. 3 fingers.
5 fingers.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically you do have 5. What is that?
I love it.
He's wearing a blue
hat
and a
green
hat and a
red hat
and a oops! He's not wearing a hat.
Yellow hat.
Yeah, it's a yellow hat. Red
shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, green shirt.
Yeah, oops! He's wearing it upside down. It's
a hippo and dog.
Good. It's
a rabbit and frog.
Good.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good. I
have a question for you. Why is tacting important?
Tacting is important because it helps with language and conversation too. When we first start off, we just have him identify labels.
It's a ladybug.
And then we move into frames, like adding article adjectives to it, like it's the dog. What is it? Say it's. Yeah, it's a chicken. And then now we're having him add 2 objects. So he has to say it's a blank and a blank.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good. And then we'll move on to like add adjectives in front of the words too. So like what he does already, he'll say like it's purple socks. It's a red shirt.
Yellow suit, blue suit, red suit.
Just to help expand his language skills a lot more. Let's go, Jack Riley. You want to copy Suzanne? That's hilarious. That's so funny. You guys are so funny. Look at you guys. Are we buddies? Are we twins? Here, give your hand. You guys are so funny. What are you doing, Jack? Are we sitting? Yeah. Yeah. I think you are thirsty. Let's get you some water. So cute. You even brought the chair over and everything. That's funny. Come on, let's get some milk, Jack. Say, come on, Suzanne.
Okay, let's go.
Cow.
Too much laughing and giggling in here. That's a good thing.
Welcome back. That was the A word. This is just a remarkable remarkable documentary, ongoing documentary that's being made. I can't say it enough or often enough how important I think it is for all of us to have some sort of a record of what this is like. When we were starting ABA, when I first had heard about ABA from a family who said, this has changed our lives. And they said, here, take this book, A Real Boy, and read this. This is going to tell you a little bit about what it's like. And the book did. It told me a lot about what it was like for the parent, a lot about what it was like in the day-to-day. But it didn't go into depth about what was happening in the therapy. It would tell outcome of it, but not what was happening. And even in terms of the day-to-day, it didn't show me enough where I could get a real good plan about how is my house going to work. And I'm a planner. I'm one of those people that I want to plan it all out. I want to figure out the space. I want to measure. Do we have room for it here? You know? And I was with somebody in an office yesterday where they were changing one desk out for the other, and she was taking pictures of it with her phone to see if it was going to work in her space. And I said, oh, see, now, if it were me, I would have a measuring tape out. I'd be going, okay, do we have room for this organization in this space? That's who I am. And I had to have something to do, you guys, because I was waiting and saying, okay, so when's my next meeting? Okay, I've got a meeting coming up then with the funding source. And okay, you know, when's our intake meeting with CARD? I needed something to hold on to in that period in the beginning. I just desperately needed something. And I had the book, A Real Boy, and I clung to it like a lifeline. And I looked at things online and to see, and of course this was back in the dark ages, 6-7 years ago, so there wasn't much, right? And I kept bothering Sienna Green or Wooten, who we've had on the show before, saying, what do I need to have? What do I need to go buy? I got to go to the toy store. What do I need? Because I wanted to sharpen my pencils. I wanted to be ready. And of course, it's a lot like when you have your baby, you know, that everybody tells you, oh, your life is going to change. And you keep going, but how? I don't know what it's going to feel like. I've never been a parent before. What is this going to, you know, am I really going to be that tired? Yes, you really are going to be that tired. They'll tell you. But you can't get a grip around it, right? Because you don't know. And I look at this now, the A word, and I know that I would have clung to this like I clung to that book, and it would have been really fulfilling for me to see, okay, this is how this family has it set up, but this is how it's going to need to work in my house. Excuse me. And this is the kind of emotional strain it's going to be on my relationship. And this is the kind of emotional strain it's going to be on my schedule. And this is what it's going to be like if we bring another child into this relationship. And, you know, and this is what the therapists are going to be saying. And this is why that lesson is going to be that important, even though in the beginning it seems like, why is that lesson important? Because it feeds 17,000 other skills that come later on that you can't see when you're underslept and overwhelmed. Underslept, overwhelmed, right? Sounds like a great title for a play. In any case, I love this documentary because you get to see some of the jargon. You get to see how the pieces of the puzzle fit in, and that by developing a skill here and developing a skill here and then developing a skill here and developing a skill here, then all of a sudden your child is speaking in sentences. And all of a sudden your child is saying, I need a minute, I gotta take a poop, right? Other people can literally poo-poo that, but those are important things to us. Those are huge milestones that what wouldn't we give to be able to have them. I love that this record exists so that people can refer to it. And by the way, for someone on my end of things, that we went through this. It's like reading a really good book that I've already read. I know what the ending of this book looks like, but I'm getting to savor parts of it that I didn't get to savor the first time I read it. When this was happening in my home, I was constantly in the worry and constantly in the fear. And so we would meet the milestone and I'd go, yeah, great. We reinforced that. We're celebrating it. Moving on. What's next? Because I felt like we were racing against the clock. Always remember a friend of mine who said, you know, make sure you have 2 children because you don't get to appreciate the milestones with the first one. You worry, oh, what if he doesn't walk? And then he walks, right? And with the second child, you just sit back and relax and count on the fact that they will walk because you know that it's going to happen. I really didn't understand that because I didn't have a second child, but I watch and I see the fears of the family in the A word, and I know it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Your child is learning and he's going to end up in a really good place. It's going to be okay. But I understand that for them, it's happening right now. But I love that for them, they're going to be able to go back and watch these videos and go, oh, what a remarkable thing we did. What an amazing journey. How grateful are we that we had this together, that we did this together. We did something really monumental. We changed our lives and suited up and showed up for our child. And because of that, he's going to have the whole world at his feet. We can all do that. There is a way for you to do that too. I've been saying it for weeks now, and some of you have been writing in, and hopefully we've been able to help you to connect you with some of the sources that you need. But what's preventing you from starting ABA, the proper amount of ABA with your child? What's stopping you? Whatever it is, I hope you'll put it in words and write it to us, because maybe there's something that we know that you previously have not been aware of. Maybe there's some service that we can help you to connect with so that you can move those obstacles to the side. I hope so, and I hope you'll take the time to write to us. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to look at your answers to the question of the day. So stick with us. Back in just a few minutes.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? What Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this? Good job!
Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know, and in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis. And now with this new skills and being, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child. And suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So that was Maddie that you just saw, a courageous family that said, you know what, we're going to do this one way or the other. And they were, and then discovered CARDI learning and skills and said, okay, not only are we going to do this, but we're going to make it that much easier, and did a wonderful job. All volunteers, you can do this. I know it's easy to sit and say, oh, I don't have access to. No, you do. You really, really do. And if it's really that, and it's infinitely less expensive to do CARDI learning and skills, but if it is still that you cannot afford it, and believe me, I understand, and had days on this journey where I would have been sitting there and saying that, so I'm not poo-pooing that at all and saying, but please ask for help. Don't sit there and just say, well, that's it then. Please fill out a grant at ACT Today and ask for CARDI learning and skills and say, I got to do something, and I want to be the best that I can be for my child, and those two things will help you to do that. And you've heard it from those parents, and they did it. Really amazing. All right, time for the question of the day. The question of the day today was, what are you worried about the most? What's the thing that's really keeping you awake at night? What's the thing that you keep thinking about? And some of you guys wrote some pretty hilarious stuff, and others some very poignant stuff. I love this one. The first person said that 50 Cent will tweet again. I don't think that will happen, but you don't know. I don't know if you saw that yesterday he had, I think it was in Ireland, he has a new line of headphones that are being released, and he was supposed to do an event with some of his fans, and the company canceled it. And said, no, we're not going to do this. So I hope he's listening. Mr. 50 Cent, I hope you're listening. A lot of you wrote in and shared what the next person shared. My son after I'm not here anymore, right? It's a hard one. It's a really, really hard one. I was just talking about that with my son last night. We had a terrible tragedy that both fish in our fish tank died, and it's just, my guilt runneth over, because I suspect that it was a confluence of events, but one of the things that we had in the tank, I suspect, was making the water not what it should have been, which would have been okay had the filter been changed more often, but you only know what you know, right? But in any case, with two fish, they both died yesterday. So it was a big death day at our house, with my son having some real emotions about it, and I was talking to him as it appeared that the first fish was dying, and we were on our way to the pet store to figure out what was going on. And I said, the truth of the matter is that everything that you see, the trees that you see, the flowers that you see as we were driving, and I said, and mommy and daddy and our dog and you were all going to die. And that's a very, humbling kind of thing. And we had a lot of conversations about death yesterday. And at one point he cried and he said, what am I going to do when you and daddy die? And I thought, yeah, that's a really good question that I wish I had a complete and total happy, there's a plan, but, it shakes me in my shoes thinking about it, right? And I know we all share those fears. And you can do all the planning in the world. It still, I don't think, completely eliminates those fears. Another person who says, I'm worried about my youngest being able to make long-lasting friendships. Yeah, you know, that's really important for all of us to have that center of people and for us to help our children to find that. That's something that we can work on with them, about individual skills. Of course, you know, having a long-lasting friendship is, how many skills does that take? Just thousands, right? But we can work on it in little itty-bitty increments with our children so that they can build those skills and make it reinforcing for them. Another person who says, my biggest priority is making sure my non-verbal 4-year-old autistic son learns to communicate normally. I love that, and I so appreciate that, and I hope that you've gotten started with a really good ABA provider and a speech and language pathologist. Another person who says, what happens when I'm gone? You know? And another person who says, what happens when I'm gone? I think we all worry about this one for sure. Another person who says, if I die, who can take care of my son? He is 5, can't even talk. Where in society is a place for autism? I just want him to be happy with his life. You know, something that my husband and I started to do, because over the years that's been a big question about, you know, where would our child go? And I think over the years, as he has changed, our opinion of where he would go has changed. And we try to talk to the people that we have an expectation will take him on a regular basis about where he is now and if their circumstances changed and if his circumstances have changed. But I have to say that it occurred to me about a year ago that there are so many segments to a life, and to have an expectation that someone or some group of people can handle all of the segments of our children's lives seemed too overwhelming to me. So what we decided to do was to create a series of godparents for different and individual things. So we asked a couple here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders if they would be his ABA godparents, because I have no doubt that at different phases in his life, my son is going to need to check in with somebody. We've seen that here at the offices, that experts will say, you know, I had somebody that I was their therapist when they were 8 or 5 or 4 or whatever, and then, you know, they didn't need ABA anymore, but they called me when they were 16 and said, hey, yeah, this dating thing, can you help me out here? Because I'm not really understanding some of the signals that I'm getting, right? And I wanted to make sure that there was somebody who was charged with that responsibility that my son could call, that they would be extra patient, that they would use the principles of ABA. And so I asked a couple here and I said, will you be his ABA godparents? My husband and I, theater is a very important thing to us, and we want to make sure that our son is exposed to really good quality theater throughout his life. And so I asked another couple, I said, will you be his theater godparents? If anything should ever happen to us, will you make sure that he gets exposed to these things? And down on the line, we asked about a bunch of different things that were really important to us. And we're still in the process. Anytime we see, you know, and I like, you know, I want him to have a math godparent, because heaven knows I am not able to do half the math that he does now, and I want somebody who's really good at math. So, you know, if something happens and I can't connect him with somebody, that he's got somebody who can call to help with the math homework, you know? And that not only gives me peace in that, but it really makes me happy, because I envision that there'll be a core, if something, you know, heaven forbid the worst should happen, there will be, you know, a home where he is safe and a core of people who are constantly checking in with him and making sure that his life is as rich as it should be. And that not only gives me peace, makes me happy. So just one of those things. Another person who said, sending my son to junior high, oh, that scares me. Makes me shake in my boots. It is so hard for a typically developing child. I can't imagine putting him through that. You know, I am there with you on this. The teenage years, and I have to be honest, it wasn't until this last year in 3rd grade when I saw how ugly it can get, how quickly, and now I'm like, oh man. I am already looking at charter schools to see, because I don't want him to go into a big junior high school. just, charter schools that have like a specific focus, like I'm thinking a science school, and it might mean a little bit more travel, or it might even mean moving a little bit. And I'm so lucky that we live in the suburbs of Los Angeles, and so there's those kinds of things. But I'm, thinking I want him to have an environment that is really reinforcing to him and does not have all the other hoopla. I don't know about that yet, but that's where I am. I'm scared about that too. What happens when I'm gone, and if he'll ever find someone to share his life with? I know. And what's interesting about that is that I hear from my friends with neurotypical children that they also worry about these things. I just think that we're able to take it to a level that they can't touch. You know what I'm saying? We have it Ubered. That and more. At this moment in my son's life, it is, when will he understand and care about using the potty? He is 5.5. I want to encourage you to go back and watch last week's Angela Persicki interview about toilet training. Oh my goodness. I hope that'll help you. But we also did an interview with Dr. Amy Kenzer a couple of weeks ago about toileting as well. And I think that between the two of those, a whole lot of light should be shed on the subject for you. You can do it. What they have told me is that there has not been a single child that they have worked with that they haven't been able to get them to toilet. Not a single one. 100% success. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but they get it done. That it's not that difficult. I know. Gives you pause, doesn't it? But don't let it go. Another person says, I have so many concerns, but I'll say the one that bothers me a lot lately is my son, who appears to have Asperger's, bipolar, and ADHD, ever going to eat right, and will he ever fit in? There are so many concerns that a parent has. It's so hard to choose one right off the rip. Wow. And when we start getting into these sort of layered diagnoses where there's other things going on, and, one doctor is saying it's bipolar, another person's saying it's autism, another person's saying it's this, it's bipolar with ADHD, it gets really dicey, right? But I have to tell you that ABA is still going to be effective for all of those things. And I hope that you'll consider looking at ABA in terms of being able to solve and help weed through some of the individual things that are going on. Also, I can tell you that for some people, cognitive behavioral therapy, when you have some of those other things going on, like a child who is really having a difficult time managing stress, can be a wonderful companion piece. It fits in quite nicely. Another person who says, I worry the most about how to get him all the help he needs and what will happen if his services get taken away. Bless you. Man, are you singing my song? Because that was the thing that I was always worried. I was like, wow, we're being so lucky we have services right now, but, what am I not doing? What do I need to do? What other information do I need to have? And what if this all gets taken away? And I would love to tell you that that's just not going to happen, but sometimes it has happened. But I hope that you'll count on us to be a support that, should the worst happen and if you lose services, that we can point you in some direction to help you get the help you need to get them back. Or even if you see that they're starting to go away, autism parents, we have a lot of power. Check out autismvotes.org if you doubt that, and become a member and get alerted as to what's happening in your state and in your country. Because our voices need to be heard on important issues that will affect whether our children get services. I'm worried about my daughter's self-esteem now that she's realizing she is behind her peers. I have no idea how old your daughter is, but there are a lot of organizations that are springing up around our country called Girl Power that are specifically designed just for girls on the autism spectrum to help them to deal with some of the issues. My goodness, it's hard to be a teenager no matter who you are, no matter what sex you are, no matter where you live, what school you go to, right? Your body is changing, your hormones are changing, your brain is changing, you're looking at each other in weird and interesting ways, right? It's rough. And, things are popping out of your skin. It's a rough time. And then add on top of that, if you're having difficulties beyond the norm socializing, oh my gosh, just tragic, right? And I think for self-esteem for all teenagers is difficult, but especially for our kids on the spectrum. And I think that there's an element to being a girl that is an extra added layer to that that's particularly difficult. The boys have other stuff that's hard for them, but the girls, the self-esteem issue seems to come up a lot. There are a lot of new books that are coming out or just came out, and we're going to be featuring some of them in the weeks coming up. But want to encourage you to look and see if there's a girl power around you, and if there isn't, maybe it's something you need to start in your community that helps to empower girls on the spectrum to know how to deal with themselves, how to deal with their self-esteem, how to deal with their bodies, and the changes that are happening to them. It's a rough time. Another person who says his adulthood, where will he end up? My ability to always care for him, and who will when I no longer can. Absolutely. I think that's, it's been said over and over and over again. It's a huge concern. Also want to remind you, yesterday we did a wonderful interview with Vince Redman, and in the second half of the interview we talked about acquiring jobs and internships, and how important for all of our kids it is for them to have a ramp up, that we don't suddenly, they're 17 and it's like, okay, what are they going to do for the rest of their lives? And one of the things that Vince said yesterday that just really, I thought, how great is this, and it's never occurred to me before, is that when our kids are younger, before their working age, to have them volunteer with some sort of organization, whether it's an animal rescue and they have to help clean out the cages, or, working in a relative's organization and, stuffing envelopes, hopefully finding something that is of interest to them, but kind of teaching them a work ethic. We showed last week the Temple Grandin TED Talk, and one of the things that Temple Grandin said that her mother never gave up on her about was teaching her basic manners and teaching her a work ethic, so that she was able to be successful at school, and that nobody cut her any slack in terms of manners and being somebody who was a conscientious employee, and that served her particularly well. Now, of course, our kids are in all different places on the spectrum, and sometimes it's more realistic than others, but there's always a place at which you can start, right? Always. About teaching manners and what's acceptable behavior-wise, and when you're working for someone. Because, of course, our goal is for all of our children to reach their fullest potential and to be productive members of society. And if we use the tools of ABA and get creative with them, I think that we can absolutely achieve that. Another person who says, will the world ever accept and care for our kids? You know what? The sad truth is they're just going to have to. If we're at 1 in 54 boys, really, I know I said yesterday, when are they going to buy a vowel? Well, I had to buy a vowel. I have a very good friend that I got to see this weekend who was one of my college roommates. And when we got out of college, she got married and she had 2 sons kind of back to back. And the second son was very profoundly affected by autism. By that point, she was living in New Jersey and I was living in California. So I didn't see her on a regular basis. But you know what? I so supremely did not get it. I did not understand what she was going through. I had no concept. I surely do now. And I have apologized to her and said, I am so sorry that I was not there for you because I did not know. And it wasn't until it happened in my life. Now, the people, it's like the rock in the pond, and the ripples that go out. And in my core family, boy, we get it, right? Go out a generation and they have a very good understanding and awareness, but, they weren't there the whole time. Go out another generation and they're like, wow, that's something, that has led to some really interesting things in their life. And you keep going out and people get further and further away. I know that there are some people who think, oh, well, you made the most of autism. Thanks. We didn't choose this, right? If somebody had told me I was going to be sitting in a studio talking about autism 3 hours a day 6 years ago, I would have said, you have lost your mind. That would not be me. Things happen, and life changes. But yeah, when are they going to get it? you know, unfortunately, it's going to touch their life in some way, and that's when they're going to get it. And I wish that that number was not going, you know, the 1 in 54. I shudder to think what we're going to hear in a couple of years. But the reality is that as that number shifts, more and more people are touched by it. They need to get it. Buy a vowel, people, right? Another person who says his ability to make lifelong friendships a close second is his diet. I'm with everyone else too with so many concerns. How do you pick just one? And there's so much to worry about. And I'm going to come back to the diet thing too in just a minute, but we got a couple of interviews coming up. When we went to the ABAI conference, there were at least 3 different experts that we talked to about diet. And just like the toileting, they said, you know, this is totally, totally manageable. If you are in a circumstance where you are having such a hard time with diet, I really want to ask you to consider targeting in a very specific way with an expert, because there are times in life when you look at something and you have this false sense of, I should be able to figure this out. I want you to identify that that's a false sense. Where was the manual that this baby came with about how to figure out how to feed a child who has sensory issues and who has feeding issues? Trust me, that manual did not come to you. You're going to have to go out and seek it out, and better because of all the baggage that you have with your child and all the different times you've sat at the high chair or across the table and tried to introduce something. Let somebody else start the work for you. I can't urge you enough. Food is so important. Get an expert involved. There's some really awesome ones out there. We're going to be bringing you some interviews with those in the coming weeks. I worry about people hurting my son. Why do people permit their children to judge or make fun of others at such a young age? Oh, I know. Why is it always me getting up to leave because you judge when he's having a meltdown? It breaks my heart when people are rude and inconsiderate of his feelings. And you know, I totally get that. I've shared before on the show that I think my biggest disappointment with autism, well, 2. One, that there were going to be people along the way who weren't going to get it. They were actively going to try to block my son from services because it was going to cost them something. That was devastating to me. And the other thing was that I was going to have to educate the ignorant public who surrounded my son. Oh, that ticked me off. Really? Not only do I have to overcome my personal grief about what's going on, and I got to overcome all my fears and all the financial issues to help my child to get tools so that he can learn and be a part of this world. I don't just have that to deal with, but I got to deal with your ignoramus self as well. Really? I did not take that well. I really didn't. But, you know, I had to come to peace with it. There are days when I have more peace with it than others. But I have to be honest with you that I do not suffer fools gladly. I am somebody who will point it out and say, you know what? You need to stop and consider how you are behaving right now because it's really inappropriate. My child is dealing with something extra. I don't know what you're dealing with, but I would ask you to be as considerate as you would want others to be of you when you're going through something. Thank you so much, right? And you know how I got there? Quite honestly, there was one day when I was having a particularly bad day with my son, just a horrible day where I was trying to get anything done in the house. It was a Sunday and it was kind of a rainy, overcast day, and it was just a horrible, horrible day. It was right before we started therapy, and he had had tantrum after meltdown after tantrum. I couldn't get anything done. I couldn't get laundry done. I needed to go to the grocery store in the worst way, and my child was just Mr. Busy Pants. And I got him into the car, and it took me a good 10 minutes to get him into his car seat, drove to the grocery store. It started to rain, and that was a big sensory thing for him at the time. Got him out, and I put him into the shopping cart, and I hooked him in, and he would literally reach over. If I was close enough where I was going to buy something in an aisle, he would reach over and pull things off the shelves. So I'm like this, you know, taking what I need and holding him off too. And in this particular grocery store, because it had specialty items, the aisles weren't wide enough for people to go 2 directions down the aisle. And they also had all these like displays out in the aisle. So you always kind of have to wait and go by people. And there was a woman who was there with 2 teenage kids, clearly just come from church, all in their best spiffy. And I don't know that they weren't coming from a funeral, you know? But she was in a snit. Just a snit. And you could tell. And when we were going into the store, you know, she let me know when we were getting the cart that I had taken too long. And she was like, oh, really? Could we get through? And like 4 different aisles, I went up and down with her. And that, you know, and she was like, oh, are we behind them again? And I finally just let her have it. I said, I am so sorry that our very existence is so unpleasurable to you. I'm dealing with something real here. I don't know what you're dealing with, but I would ask you not to visit it on us. And she, you know, like I had slapped her right across the face. And let me just say, when I was saying the words, I was envisioning slapping her across the face. And I honestly don't know. And like I said, she might have been coming from a funeral, but she stepped back and realized what she was being, didn't apologize, right, but left us alone. Because I was just so very done with her. And it was interesting because I got in the car and I just cried and cried and cried. Because then I felt like a horrible person. But you know, I'm sorry, I couldn't deal with it anymore, and it was making it worse. And nobody should be treated that way. We were just grocery shopping, and she was impatient with our existence. And I went home, and I actually got a phone call from the friend that I was talking about earlier, whose son is on the spectrum and is older, much older, who I had not been there for. And she was telling me about her day with her son, who is still much more affected with autism than my son is. And she was talking about going to the grocery store, and she said, oh yeah, people look at him, people make judgments. And I said, how do you deal with that? How do you get through this? And she said, I'm so proud to be his mother. And she said, I always stand taller when I'm someplace with him. She said, because I know that I showed up for him. And it doesn't matter what anybody says or does or thinks, they don't get it. I don't have time for them. But I am proud of who I am, and I'm proud of who my child is. And there isn't a person on this earth that can take that away from me. And I thought, okay, you know, I need to get in that space. And for these people who are ignorant and who don't get it, that's exactly what it is. It's ignorance. And when I can, I'll educate them. And when I don't have time, I don't have time. Their loss. Yeah, people are rude. People are rude. Another person who says, I'm wondering for his future in school. He just had learned he will have to go to special school, and how will the other kids or adults think about him? You know, if he's thinking about what others are going to think about, the good news is that he's doing really well. That's perspective taking. It's hard for us as parents when they start to go, oh, people are going to look at me different. But it is a sign of progress. That's a milestone. Another person who says, worried about my son's education as he's being let down. Just want my son to have a happy, normal life. If he's not getting the education where he needs to do, shake it. Shake it right up and say, this isn't working. Don't be afraid to do that. It might make a rough transition, but don't waste time with people who are not helping him. Time is valuable, and your child is worth it. You're worth it. All right, and that was just some of them. We don't have time to do all of them. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're either going to talk about challenging behavior, or we might do some more of these. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provide you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Want to give you a couple of programming notes to let you know what's happening the rest of this week. In just a few minutes, when we do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we're going to air an interview that we did with Vena Tiero. She is the filmmaker and one of the people featured in the film My Tiero Boys. She's a single mom raising 2 young boys with autism, very courageous, dynamic, very honest young woman. And Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and I had the opportunity to sit down with her and interview her. I think it's been about 2 months ago now that we did the interview. So we've been waiting for an opportunity to be able to show you that, and we're going to show that to you today. Also want to let you know that tomorrow in the studio, we are going to have author Richard Strip, who is going to be with us. He is the author of the book, Mommy, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me in School Today. I know if you're an autism family, you have seen this book advertised on the internet because it's everywhere and everybody's talking about it. It's a very, easy to read book in terms of it's not lengthy, and it's segmented into different stories. It is sometimes difficult to read in terms of what the things it describes, but important. It's so important that we not stick our head in the sands, and if we're sending our kids away to school, to have an awareness of the kinds of things that happen in school, to know what kinds of things to look for, and to imagine things from our children's perspective. You know, we ask our kids on a regular basis, and we hopefully are helping them to see other people's perspectives. And it's so important that we take the time to see things through their perspective. You know, we went to see Brave the other day, and it was very interesting to me. I'm not going to give anything away, but it called into question in my mind that so many of the movies that have been out in the last 10 years that are kids movies, animated kids feature movies, so many of them are centered around this theme of a child who is trying to do something and the adults around them aren't listening. And, you know, I think there's a reason for that. There's a reason why there's so much mileage in that song, because I think a lot of us felt like that when we were teenagers that people didn't listen to us. And I know my mom always said, well, you know, every generation should do it better. So we need to do it a little bit better. And I think that in our community, it's easy to poo-poo and say, well, you know, my kid isn't communicating, so I don't know. And it's that much harder and it's that much more poignant. I would love to have a teenager who's arguing with me and saying, Mom, you're not listening to me. I've got a child who's nonverbal. But the point is that we've been talking a lot here about the fact that behavior is communication. Behavior is communication, and we need to watch and listen and hear what is happening with our children. And we need to ask for our caregivers and our aides and our teachers to watch and listen and hear. And that's really what this book is about looking at behavior and hearing, even when the children aren't speaking, what it is they're saying. It's really an amazing book, and we are going to have the author, as I mentioned, in the studio with us tomorrow, and we're going to be giving away one of the copies of this book. I'm not sure how we're doing that yet, but you're going to want to tune in. He's going to be with us at 10:20, and then at 11 o'clock tomorrow, Angela Persicki is going to be joining us again. She is the Assistant Director of the Autism Research Group, a really important organization, new organization that is basing all of its research on things that are driven by us as parents. So before they do any research, they literally sit down and think to themselves, will this be important and significant to a parent? Gotta tell you, I love that. That's a breath of fresh air, because so many times I look at the studies and I go, really? Did we need to do that study? I'm sorry, were we not clear on that anyway? Like, you know, I understand it. They have to, you know, prove things and prove them again and prove them again. But really, we needed to do a study on whether or not smoking affected pregnancy. Really? You know, because nobody should be smoking while they're pregnant anyway, right? Do we not already know that? And I love these studies when they say, we did a study and we discovered that parents of children with autism spectrum disorder have more stress than parents who don't. Really? You don't say. I'm fascinated. Exactly how much money did you spend on creating that research? And how much time and how many people did you devote towards that? Sometimes it just makes me go, not the best use of my time. And I'm just going to guess not the best use of some other people's time as well. And so I love that the Autism Research Group stops and considers, is this research that is going to be of interest to parents? Is it something that will have an impact for parents? Is it something that will help them on this journey through autism? So you got to love that. And by the way, you can fill out a survey from the Autism Research Group by going to the autismresearchgroup.org, I believe it is, and talking to them about, you can fill out a survey and say what kinds of things you're interested in. They're also doing a questionnaire right now about parent training that they would like to have your opinions about, that will help them as they move forward. What kinds of things you would like to get in a parent training. You know, when Jem was about to start ABA therapy, our funding source, the regional center here in the state of California, required that my husband and I both do a 16-hour training, parent training, and we had to do it together. And I know that wherever you are, you know that getting 16 hours on somebody else's schedule with your significant other while you have a child with autism, that is, the equivalent of taking the Rocky Mountains and moving them to, New York City with one pickup truck and one tow hitch, right? It's asking a lot. And I think it's just like the first hoop of how serious are you? If you are, jump through this hoop. And we figured it out thanks to a really good friend of mine who is very good and very patient, who made herself available so that we could go to those classes. But I remember going and saying, this better be of use to us. It happened that it was. But I know some people have gone to parent trainings around the world and said, you know what, really, this did not do the job for me. I really could have used X, Y, and Z. So take the time, fill out the Autism Research Group survey about what you would want in a parent training, what would be of importance to you, because they'll be publishing some research about that at some point, and you'll have wanted to have had your opinion included. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and to this segment, which we fondly refer to as Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod, and usually that is the cue for Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson to say, and I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, Nancy is not able to be with us today. She has had a family issue come up, and we want to first of all say that our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family. And we won't be here next week, but Nancy will be back with us in 2 weeks. She is here with us in spirit today, and in just a few minutes we're going to play an interview that we were able to tape a couple of weeks ago in studio with both myself and Nancy. I mentioned earlier that Vena Tiero, is a wonderful filmmaker of single mom who is making it work. So we'll show you that interview in just a few minutes. But I want to tell you, talk a little bit about stuff happening in the news, right? We usually start out with in the news, what's happening. Of course, one of the biggest things in the news this last week were the comments made by rapper 50 Cent. And I had to take a little pause there, right? Because it just seems like the story unfolds a little bit more and more. And of course, if you've been following the story, you've been following it on our show, there was on his Twitter, there was one of his fans who very clearly made a really inappropriate, unacceptable comment, right? And I can understand why the rapper was upset. Please understand that it was wildly inappropriate, and I can understand why he was upset. But, things happen throughout our lives, and people say things to us, and we don't have control over what they say to us. What we have control over is our reaction. Right? And there are times when you have to say something to somebody, like I was just talking about me saying to the woman in the grocery store, excuse me, I do not know what your problem is, but don't visit it on us. Sometimes you got to stand up for yourself and say, that's inappropriate, right? And we can do that in lots of different ways. Well, the way in which Mr. Cent decided that he would school this person, he said, I looked at your picture, fool. You look autistic. That was his opening salvo, right? Which is, of course, an ignorant comment. There is no look to autism, but it was clearly this attempt to make it seem, and paired with fool, to make it seem like you could look autistic and it was something bad to be autistic. And as if that weren't enough, he couldn't leave that alone. He came back a little bit later and said, I don't want no special ed kids on my page. Follow somebody else. Yes, and there we have it. And a lot of people took big issue. I take big issue with that. We talk about bullying and we talk about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And if somebody on my son's schoolyard said that to him, I would be in the principal's office and I would be calling meetings and I would call that handicap harassment. You bet I would. And I would be right and it would be actionable. And I don't know what it is going to take for people to realize you just can't talk that way to our kids or about our kids. That's being a bully. And 50 Cent, in my opinion, was behaving like a bully. I'm not saying that the other person's behavior was okay either, but who's the grown-up here? And no one was, frankly. In any case, a lot of people put their 2 cents in, 2 cents, 50 cent, right? And said, this is not appropriate. And really my favorite, Holly Robinson Peete, on her site, the Holly Rod Foundation's site, hollyrod.org. You should go there and check it out. She has her blog that's called Holly's Huddle. And I love Holly Robinson Peete. I think she's been a really outspoken, eloquent advocate for our children. She's a fierce autism mom. I love having her on my team, right? Because she does use her following in a responsible way when she's talking about autism, and behaves in a way that lets people know that she's a woman of honor. And she wrote a really lovely piece to 50 Cent on her blog, Holly's Huddle, that you really need to check out. Again, it's hollyrodfoundation.org, in which she said to him, you know, I've had the opportunity to meet you, and I know you to be an intelligent philanthropist. So I really have to ask myself, do you even know what autism is? And her shock at having to even ask that question. And then, of course, she did school him a little bit about what autism was. And she said, you know, and this comment about special ed, really, you don't want a special ed kid following you? Is that really what you want to be putting out into the world? Because these kids are challenged as it is, and you want to make it worse. And Mr. 8 million followers, hello, if 1 in 54 boys is on the spectrum, you really want to be making statements like that and tell these people you don't want them following you? Because you might have a lot more followers than you think who are on the spectrum or who have kids on the spectrum. Do you just want to pause for a moment and consider this? But she ended it so eloquently and said, you know, my son is what autism looks like. And my son is a big fan of yours. And he has a lot of things, a lot of hurdles that he has to overcome, and what you're doing isn't helping. She asked that he remove the comments, and I don't recall, I'd have to read it again. I don't think that she asked him necessarily for an apology. We certainly did on this show and said, you need to make an apology. You need to make amends for this. And over the weekend, he did. He, you know, had them release a comment saying he was very sorry if anybody was hurt by his comments. All right. You know, and I think he's shocked. I'm just going to guess that he's shocked that everybody's not, oh, okay, and willing to forgive and forget. But I go back to that schoolyard, and if somebody said that to my son on the schoolyard, we would expect an apology, would we not? But that would not be the end of it. We would expect some education to happen, and we would expect some amends. And we shared yesterday, I just think, you know, put your money where your mouth is. Your name is 50 Cent. Well, fork up 50 cents for each one of those followers. You know, there's a wonderful thing in the play Doubt about when you say something, when you cast an aspersion, that you rip open a pillow full of feathers and you let it go to the universe. And when you suddenly go, oh, okay, I didn't mean it, that you can never get all of those feathers back. You said that on your Twitter with 8 million followers, and you printed your apology someplace other than Twitter, and your expectation is that we're all going to be fine, but those 8 million feathers are out there. You need to do something larger. And I asked you to fork over 50 cents per viewer, donate $4 million to Autism, the charity of your choice. Gave you some suggestions. Other people have been writing in and giving their suggestions. We'll see what happens, but of course what did happen yesterday is that a publicity event that he was attending for his new headphones. Maybe you had the headphones on too much, Mr. 50 Cent. Maybe you need to take the headphones off and listen. It was canceled because the promoter did not like the comments that you made. Are you listening? Are you hearing? Remove the headphones. Stick with us. Well, you know, and I think, and a lot of you wrote it and said, you know, it's easy to write a check, Shannon, and I agree. I do think that this needs to be treated exactly like we would treat the schoolyard bully. There needs to be some education and some amends made. So I think still write that $4 million check. I'm sure you got it laying around on the couch cushions. Write the check. And if you want to make it bigger, we'd certainly appreciate that too. Autism charity of your choice. I'm just saying. But in addition to that, I think that maybe, Mr. 50 Cent, you need to spend some time with some kids with autism. And I think you also need to spend some time with some kids who fall under the heading of special ed, which, by the way, a lot of kids with autism don't fall under that heading. Yes. And I know if Nancy were here, she'd be up in arms too. In any case, I know that when Nancy joins us in 2 weeks during that show, we're going to be joined by another rapper, Ricky J. A rapper who uses his influence for the betterment of our society, who actually donates his time to advocate for autism charities and to help them to raise money. Somebody who uses his voice in a way that is positive. And so we'll be having Ricky J on the 25th. I want to remind everybody of that. In any case, a couple of months ago, Nancy and I were able to sit down with the wonderful Vena Thiero. Oh, I forgot, too. There's another story that I need to share with you that hits very close to home before we show the Vena interview. That, you know, there is the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, the IACC. This is an organization that was established in 2006 when the Combating Autism Act of 2006 passed. This was under George W. Bush. This act was passed, and it was reauthorized in 2011 under the Obama administration. And so this IACC, the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, its purpose is to coordinate all efforts within the Department of Health and Human Services that have to do with autism spectrum disorder and research and screening, intervention, and education. And its primary mission is to facilitate the efficient and effective exchange of information on autism activities among the member agencies, and to coordinate autism-related programs and initiatives. I know there's been a lot of people who have suggested that since the reauthorization that they have not met as frequently as they would like them, but that is what their mission is, that they're supposed to be coordinating between all these different agencies. Because for too long, somebody would know something and the information wasn't being shared. They recently published their research, Autism Spectrum, the 2010 IACC Autism Spectrum Disorder Research Portfolio Analysis Report. And what it does is break down who is donating what to autism research. And in the 2010 report, it states quite clearly that the Center for Autism and Related Disorders is the only private for-profit corporation contributing significantly to autism research in the United States, ranking third among non-governmental agencies and organizations contributing to autism research in the United States. Pretty amazing, and so when I just wanted to share that with you because that's some pretty heady stuff right there. But when we bring you in experts from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and other research groups, I'm just letting you know where some of that money has gone and that they have given roughly $1 million to research. So money well spent. All right, now it is time for our interview with Vena Thiero. You know, I had never met Vena before a few months ago, but I went to see a screening of her documentary, My Thiero Boys. And I was I thought that only one of her children was on the spectrum. But the film details Vena's life and how she came to have her children diagnosed. She is a single parent who works and has a really rough time of it in a very small apartment with two growing boys, both on the spectrum. She's an amazing woman, and Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and I had an opportunity to sit down with her and interview her. I will tell you that in this interview, she is shockingly honest. So be prepared. You are forewarned that there are some things said that if you have children in the room, it may not necessarily be some conversations that you want to hear discussed with your children in the room, but I am so in awe of her and of her honesty about some of the things that she talks about. I think that she's a remarkable woman, and if you have an opportunity to screen her film, and I understand that she's available if you want to screen her film for an organization, that she is happy to hook you up with that. And if you have an opportunity to see the film, it's really quite amazing. She is a remarkable person. So take a look at our interview with Vena Thiero.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
Hi, everybody. We have a wonderful special guest for you today that we're so thrilled that she could take the time to join us. This is Vena Thiero. Is it Thiero or Thiero?
I answer to anything from those who love me.
Well, I love you, but I want to get it right. It's Thiero, isn't it?
It's Thiero. It's a West African name, and my ex-husband pronounces it Thiero, so I Americanized it and say Thiero.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful name. We're thrilled to have you here with us, and you are an autism mom.
That I am.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Tell us about your boys, your Tiero boys.
Thank you. Not like you guys don't already know, but sharing with you all, I have 2 boys in the spectrum, and I'm so glad you both got to meet them.
Yes, beautiful boys.
Yeah, the oldest is 15 right now, and the youngest is 13. The youngest is nonverbal. With prompting in the right situations, he does generate a bit of language. The oldest is verbal.
And their names?
The oldest is Carter, and the youngest is Bakari.
Okay.
Love it. Good names.
And tell us about, I know this is a big question, tell us about why don't we start with the oldest boy, and when he was diagnosed and when you knew he had autism.
Well, that was a weird thing, him being 15, that was early.
Okay.
When diagnoses happen nowadays, you guys have much better ways of knowing.
Right.
Well, his first birthday, we sang happy birthday, and he cried and freaked out. An uncommon reaction.
Right.
At 1 year old. He could write, he could sing songs, he knew his alphabet. I was a crazy mother. I did flashcards in the crib.
Right, right.
So he had a great deal. Did you? Oh,
yes, I did. Yeah.
Well, so he had a lot of knowledge, but he couldn't put a 3-word sentence together. So we started out with speech therapy. And fortunately, I had a friend at work, Annie McGretty, whose godson displayed the same things. We come to work and she said, you know, my godson did the same thing on his 1 year birthday
I happen to know
party.
Annie. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and then so that family moved more quickly and got their son diagnosed, and at that point I knew that's what it was. Still dragged my feet, but got the speech online, got his language going really well, and then got him diagnosed.
Okay.
But when I was getting him diagnosed, I had the second child.
All right.
So there he was meeting all of his benchmarks, you know, speaking words, you know, having, you know, small phrases and whatnot. And so we got the first diagnosis for Carter, and then we went on to get other assessments.
And Carter was what, about 3 when he got his diagnosis?
Yeah, around 3.
Okay.
Because we started around 2, and then around 3 we knew.
Well, you knew he had an autism diagnosis.
Right, because you do OT, you do the psych.
Did he get a full-on autism diagnosis or PDD and OS?
He had PDD and OS. So, and in the beginning, because the parents fill out the majority of the information, I'm checking everything going, not this guy, but the guy at home is great. You know, the guy at home, I'm going, he's great. This guy registers here. Well, towards the end, I'm checking this off going, this guy is here, but the guy at home is worse. He had digressed.
Okay.
So,
at what age did you start seeing with Bakari? You said he was meeting his milestones. When did he stop and start regressing?
Around 18 months, a little after that, approaching 2 years of age. And I really do see it as being timed with the MMR. I'm one of those parents who just has to admit to what happened.
Right, you see a difference. You saw a definite decline in your son after that.
Definite.
And we do
Extreme,
hear that.
actually.
Okay.
I mean, his vision went away.
Okay. Right after the vaccine?
Yes, he had that hang your mouth open, tongue hang out look. Whereas before he was bright and chipper, eyes focused, you know, words, you know, mama, dada, shoe. I remember my girlfriend saying, I taught him shoe. Did you teach him that? You know, just all those great things.
Yeah. So both boys are diagnosed. Tell us about your journey from there. I know it's a long journey, but I can't even imagine being a mom of 2 children on the spectrum. And then basically you have raised these boys by yourself, have you not?
Well, primarily, yeah. Their dad was with us for a good length of time. We've just been divorced about 6 years now.
Okay.
Although he traveled quite a bit, and my friends always joked that I was a single mom even while I was married, just because of the amount of time that I had to endure raising them. So we had 2 nannies because he traveled, and I worked in network news. And so those are crazy long hours.
Yes, they are.
I often went to work before they got up, and many times came home after they'd gone to bed.
Right.
And so we had one nanny to stay with one child and one to drive the other one to therapy sessions and things of that nature. I was able to participate as much as possible. We had in-home floor time, and so I made it a point to really participate in those sessions. And then we had speech on the weekends, and I made it a point to attend those sessions. So I did what I could when I could, and you know, during my breaks at work, constantly scheduling more evaluations, because you're constantly having more evaluations. You're on the phone trying to get services, and you know, but we got many things online. Carter was able to early on get into a program at UCLA after school, which helped him, and then social skills through Yellen and Associates, who are phenomenal, really brought him out. I mean, Galit Gott just gave him real life experiences, even, you know, telephone conversations. She gave him scripts. And so now you can tell he's personable, and it's because of these scripts. He literally follows what he's supposed to say in situations, and then it opens him up to conversations.
Something that Nancy always likes to say is that your disability can become your opportunity.
Oh, completely.
And that's, you depict that beautifully, because with all of this that happened to you, you decided to make a documentary. And it's beautiful. Nancy and I got to see it a couple of weeks ago. It's absolutely beautiful.
So honored that you guys were there.
We were thrilled to be there. We were at the premiere. And I just have to say to our viewers that are listening and watching, hopefully this documentary, and it's going to be a series is my understanding, hopefully this documentary will be available to the general public, and we can be involved in some way to making that happen. It is moving, emotional, informative, educational, powerful, disturbing, transformative. I mean, I can't even think of enough superlatives. I think both Shannon and myself, it really impacted me. I have to tell you that. I have to tell you that not only did it impact me from a standpoint of being a mom with a child with autism, but what you are attempting, and I believe you will be doing, in educating the public on how this disorder affects families and how all-encompassing it is, and how devastating it can be, and the impact it's going to have on our society, I think is just, it's really outstanding, Dana.
It is. You know, the thing that I was struck by, and I said to you immediately afterwards, you were to the bone honest. And there aren't enough people who can be or are willing to be for the camera to be that level of honest. But it wasn't just that, it was that you were honest and that you remain hopeful while you were honest. That was really deeply inspirational.
Well, that's what we are. That's who you are. That's who you are. Well, I mean, we're faced with this, but something makes us remain hopeful, because we really believe somehow, I don't know how, that our children are going to be self-sufficient, that they're going to thrive, that they're going to be adults who have wonderful, qualitative lives. And I don't know how I got there. I know I read the Bible, and I believe in that God has a way, and that He only gives you what you can handle. And somehow early on I knew, and this is part of Nancy's 10 Steps to Empowerment. Number 4, don't compare, run your own race. Somehow I got there. I stopped comparing myself with other people, and I would say to most people, this is my norm. So much so, I filled in Sunday school with the toddlers. And I'm sitting at the table with all these little kids, and they're having conversations. They're listening and taking it to the next level and coming up with these brilliant ideas, and I'm just there in awe with my mouth hung open going, they're really talking. I had no idea kids talk like that.
Exactly.
I didn't know.
And had reciprocal conversations and that kind of thing. Yes.
It wasn't my norm.
Well, that don't compare is really important. But I want to get back to what you hope. What is your dream with this documentary and series of documentaries of what you want to accomplish with them?
This is to help people learn and understand how to include the autism culture into society, both socially and professionally. In addition, it's to help showcase our children so that they see themselves in the media, so that they see themselves on the big and the little screen. They're part of our society. They should be included, and everybody should accept them as they are, just like, and know everything about them, understand it. Just like when somebody says basketball, you've got it. You know the terms, you know there's a ball, you know the people are generally tall, you know they make lots of money, you know all the details. Autism, we want them to know everything. Some are verbal, some are not verbal, some, you know, are extremely intelligent, but socially they have issues, you know. Many are on medications. We need to know if they took it or not, you know, things like that. You know, I want them to know it just like they know taxes, meaning everybody knows you have to do something about taxes. Autism, you have to do something about it, whether it affects your immediate family or your next door neighbor.
So obviously your feeling is that the general public is not, needs to be made more aware about what the disorder is.
Exactly. We know of the term, we know it's somewhat of an epidemic, and unless it's within, you know, elbow's reach, you really don't know much else, and you don't realize that you can play a part.
One of the things I was struck by, and I know Shannon and I spoke about it after the screening, the amount of footage you had to shoot, and you just used a little handheld camera. This is not, talk about low budget, talk about your, I mean, you had this rolling during, there's one moment in the film where you're really at an all-time low that you capture it, and you know, what honesty is that for you?
Videotaping a tantrum and not attending to my children, you don't want to imagine it. You just don't even, but understanding that unless people we really deal with, they wouldn't know. You can tell people about something, but when they see it actually, then they know. That's out of control. That's some craziness.
And you know, I have to tell you that one of the things we talk about on the show is that, you know, people always ask me for footage of my son's tantrums, and I didn't, because I was feeling what you were feeling, which was I was supposed to be doing something. But we recommend now that people videotape them because
videotape the tantrums.
Yeah.
Videotape the tantrums.
Very important.
Tantrums.
Because first of all, it gives you that emotional divorce so that you're not in the moment freaking out with them. It gives you something that you can look back at the behavior afterwards. It will actually help you to be able to change that behavior later on. It's actually a really great thing to do, to videotape them. So, and you're a great example that it doesn't feel good in the moment, but I'm sure you learned a lot by videotaping and then looking back at the videotape of what the behavior is like.
Well, that's what they teach us in ABA. You have to see what is the antecedent,
exactly,
and you document what started, what happened during, what are you going to do afterwards, what may you have done before to have prevented it.
Exactly.
And so on videotape, that's what we'll do. And RDI does a lot of videotaping to help us learn process and identify what we're doing in the moment.
In terms of all the interventions, treatments, schools, what do you feel overall has been the most helpful?
Two things. The first, for Bakari, the in-home therapy. We started out with ABA and then we went to adaptive skills. In-home therapy helped us regulate the household.
Okay.
And our very first therapist, Jennifer Strauss, with working with autism, was just phenomenal. She not only put Bakari in order, but she put me in order.
All right.
And a lot of times we parents aren't ready to step up and do what we must. We want to have our life, we want to escape. But there's work to be done, and so she waited and watched until I was ready to actually come on board and showed me how to keep him in line. And there's many things we must deny our children of in order to generate language, in order to generate proper behavior. So in-home therapy, particularly ABA and adaptive skills, as they grow older, I think the changing of both is always going to be necessary, because as they grow, then there's new ways to use the therapies and new skills to be adapted. So the second thing, and it also helped Carter, because once Bakari was in line, I had more energy to devote to him with homework, and his homework is a big deal. So the second thing for us is getting them in a good school, which they're at the Help Group, which is an institution devoted to dealing with all the varieties of levels of special needs. So those two things.
Okay, so those were, and what about for you as a parent? You spoke about your spirituality and your and reading the Bible, and I know in the film your church is a very important component of your keeping you centered.
It's it. God is it. But I have to tell you, I always have depended on God, but it still did not prevent me from sinking into horrific depression. And during that period, I self-medicated. I smoked a lot of pot. And I thought that escape was going to help me. And it really didn't.
It's still, the problems are still there when you
Yes. And
get
so,
up in the
you know,
morning.
and I had to depend on God to take that away. And once that was away, I was able to really focus on them. Really just look at them and hear what God wanted me to do in particular instances. And it was in a Bible study that the Lord really put it on my heart to do the videotape. And like you said, it's small budget. I mean, I wrestled. I have no budget. I have no HD cameras, you know. I have no means to make this right. I know how to do it because fortunately I came up in production throughout the variety of careers I embarked upon. But I knew what good production needed. And if it wasn't for, you know, just putting myself in the presence of the Lord and listening when he said, just shoot, just edit, and me having the confidence to go on Craigslist and purchase, you know, secondhand equipment, you know, and ask all my friends in the business for favors who gave me huge favors.
The editing of it, I can't even imagine how overwhelming that task was, having to edit it and go through. How long did it take you to edit this film?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I did it in parts and sections over a period of time. The last stretch was about 3 months, but one segment on the pool, Heroes Rise, that is a 2-minute segment that took nearly 8 hours. So,
but you're quite a storyteller. Clearly, this is one of your many talents, that you're quite a storyteller. To, you know, to listen to the audience as they were watching it and their reactions and how with you and with your children they were as they were watching, it was really quite an event. And I'm glad that I got to be there to see it.
I'm so glad. I was afraid. There were 2 screenings, as you know. The first one, I was too afraid to sit in. So, but the second one, I made myself do it, and I was really pleased that people laughed.
Oh yeah, people laughed, people cried, people applauded.
People shouted out. At the screen, and were yelling to your image on the screen and saying, "You hang in there, you hang in there." Very emotional
They're with you
response.
all the way. And you also educate quite a bit in the documentary. You have interviews with. You came and interviewed me.
Yes.
And you also have 2 other experts.
Martin, who's an attorney and an advocate, and the co-founder of the Special Needs Network, and the author of the Everyday Advocate, and Dr. Robert Sears, the author of the Autism book and the Vaccine book. So, yeah, I wanted to let people know 3 things: how God gets me through it, what they need to know about autism and what we are all facing today, and what's the 3rd thing? I don't remember.
What we're facing, how you got through it.
Information, education, spirituality, and what my family's like. The personal story, the informative story, and the spiritual story. And that's unheard of. It's hard to put those 3 together, and I don't know how successful I am, but
it's wonderful.
People are moved on all 3 levels.
Well, it just proves to me that you don't need a big budget to be effective, and I hope that's a great lesson. And also, as you said, I speak a lot about your disability being your opportunity, and when I do public speaking at autism conferences, I reference both of these 2 women, because to me you are both amazing examples of how, despite being handed what some people would consider, you know, lemons, I guess, you have made lemonade out of it, and you have loved your children unconditionally and found a way to help others through this process of having a child or children with autism. And you've taken what you do best and used that and followed that path and really helped so many others along the way, and that's so to be commended. And I want all the families that listen and all the parents that listen to us to realize that autism can really be a journey in and of itself to find a calling. And it doesn't have to be grand. You don't have to make a documentary or host radio and television shows like, or webcasts like Shannon does. But even in small ways, you know, you can make a difference. And everybody has a talent, I believe.
Yes.
Like you two women do.
And like you. And I encourage people, two things. If you have the opportunity to go to a conference and hear Nancy Alspaugh Jackson speak, that is a boost that will carry you through for months. And if you have the opportunity, and I hope so very soon, to see this important film, that you really need to get there and see it because it's beautiful.
Now, is there going to be a website? Is there
The website is accessible, mytieroboys.com.
Okay, and you'll have updates about how people can come if the film is going to be screening. Will the public be able to come to a screening?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be on the website.
And I'm looking for organizations who would like to host screenings.
Host screenings, okay.
I have friends in Atlanta who are working on a location right now. I have friends in New York doing the same, in Chicago and San Francisco.
Okay.
And even if I don't know you, just contact me through the website at info@mytieroboys.com and let me know. Any group, 20, 30 or more. I'd love to be able to shoot you over a DVD and, if possible, you know, be available via Skype, or if it's not too far, to come and answer questions.
Okay.
It's about getting this information to people and, you know, healthcare organizations. Please, this is the most wonderful educational tool. My church is starting a special needs ministry.
What church is that?
In His Presence,
Okay.
in Woodland Hills, and they are going to require that all of the staff see the documentary because it helps them understand.
Yes. Very
Absolutely.
good.
Well, congratulations on a job well done and a job continuing.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks for joining us, Fana. And we'll be having you back, I'm sure, in the future to keep us updated because you're going to film festivals.
Yes.
And I think I know there's some amazing miracles in store for you and your family.
Stick with us. We're going to be back in just a few minutes with more information for you. Stick with us. Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and there we were with the wonderful Vena Tiero. And I have to tell you, truly, watching the film that she edited, there are some moments that she really is quite the storyteller, and it unfolds in this very interesting way, and she has different subheadings and segments of the film, so that the story is told in such a way it's really quite brilliant. And there was one moment in particular in the film when, you know, she's been gung-ho, I'm gonna do this, I can do this, you know, but she keeps being honest about it when things aren't working out great and saying, you know, I can't do everything, because she's a single mom, right? Even if you're not a single mom, you can't do everything. But there's one moment in particular where she videotapes a particularly poignant moment when she's sitting there at her table, and she's in her nightgown, and it's like Sunday morning, and she says, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I don't know if I can do this. I just don't know if I have it in me. I don't know if I can do this. I just am lower than a bug's belly. I can't. You know, and it was this interesting moment screening this with an audience, and people just started yelling at the screen as if she was sitting right there in front of her. And I know that a lot of people in the audience, I'm going to get emotional, a lot of people in the audience were like Nancy and I, parents, and we all, you know, had that moment where we recognized that moment. It's the moment none of us ever want to have videotaped, right? It's the moment that I wouldn't even admit to my best friend that I would have occasionally, right? Because it's ugly, ugly, ugly moment, right? No makeup, in the nightgown, sitting at the table going, you know what? I just don't know if I can do this. But it's interesting when you see somebody else have the moment, you know in your gut, you know in your heart, you know so strongly in your chest, you feel like, yes, you can. And people started yelling at the screen. That's exactly what people were like. Yes, you can. You can. You are doing it. You are, you know, and it was just so interesting to see how everybody reacted. And it was also interesting to see, because I think all of us that were watching were sitting there having that moment, and we were talking to her because we knew she could, but it reminded all of us that we could too. Because we all have that moment, right? And sometimes we have that moment twice in a week. Oh, it's ugly, right? It hurts to think, I just don't know if I've got it in me. But what a wonderful gift to all of us to be able to see that moment, to let us in. Because, you know, she had to sit there and edit that. And afterwards I thought, man, you know, there had to have been at least one part of her that thought, I think I'll just take that out. I don't think I want to show that. I don't think I want to admit to that. I don't want people to see what I look like without makeup. I don't want people to see me sitting there with dirty dishes on my table in my nightgown. I don't think that's how I want to put myself out there. And she was brave enough to say, no, this is part of this. This is part of this. And she is. She's incredibly, incredibly honest, a woman of great faith. And that is certainly a part of her story that she tells in her film. As I said, if you have the opportunity, you can visit www.mytieroboys.com and find out more about the documentary. If you have the opportunity to screen this film, or you have an organization that you would like to screen this film, ask Vena, because I think she'd be thrilled to be able to do that. And you should find more information on her website about upcoming screenings that she has. Really an amazing, amazing journey that she's been on. And so poignant that the first son, you know, was diagnosed and that she had to fill out all the questionnaires. And when she first started, and it took her a while, it took her a couple of months to fill out all the paperwork that she had to do. And it wasn't until she was finishing up the paperwork and she was looking at all the questions and the answers that she'd put down, and said that a lot of it she just didn't think applied to her oldest son. But as she was doing the questionnaire, she realized, but it does apply to my younger son. And that was the frightening sort of tipping moment. And her older son, who is doing quite well in school and is quite the artist, and really doing well, you know, has different things that he's dealing with, but she has infinitely more challenges with the younger son, which, and they are beautiful young men. Oh my goodness, they are just beautiful to look at. And to see what she struggles to raise these two young men who are really, she's not a short lady. She is a woman of stature, you know what I'm saying? And her sons are now taller than her. It's not easy, really not easy. They're physically a handful. And raising them in a very small apartment and making it work, man, it's something. This is a film that everybody should see. In any case, check out their website, www.mytieroboys.com. It's THIERO, I believe. I'm going to check on that, and we're going to take a break and come back, and I'm checking on it right now. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill well, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back. I just wanted to remind you that the website, I don't know if I said it the right spelling or not, www.mytieroboys.com, mytieroboys.com. There's a lot of information that you can learn more about Vena, about her son. She's got some interesting information there about autism, and there's a place for upcoming screenings. And again, you can request that she come and screen the film at your facility for your organization, and I think that Vena would do everything she could to make that a possibility. So really a wonderful evening of entertainment, catharsis, and you do laugh, boy. There are times when she is so honest that it is hilariously funny, and she is someone who, she's dynamic and looks at the glass as being half full. So I think you will absolutely enjoy it. My Tiero Boys. Again, www.mytieroboys.com, mytieroboys.com. There we have it. Want to remind you some interesting things that are coming up the rest of this week, which is only tomorrow, because starting on Friday, I am on vacazione, and I need it. I need to spend some time with my child. But tomorrow, we are going to have the author of Mommy, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me in School Today. He's going to be in the studio with us, and we're going to be giving away a copy of this book. It's really an important book about our kids and what they sometimes go through at school. We're always asking our kids to take other people's perspective, and I don't know that we take enough time to take their perspective. You know, life can only be better when we take our children's perspectives into account, and that's exactly what this book does. Tells from the child's perspective, and these are largely nonverbal children, so the author is putting himself in their shoes to tell their story. It's a really very emotional, but a very empowering book for parents and teachers and aides to read. This is an awesome book to give as a gift to a teacher or to an aide, to have them take a moment and think about it from the child's perspective. You know, so often we get caught up in our day, what we have to do, what we have to accomplish, and we don't always stop and consider what it feels like for them, what it seems like for them. They engage in challenging behavior, but as we talk about on this show all the time, the behavior is communication, and we really need to sharpen our ears and pay attention. We're also going to have with us tomorrow Angela Persicki. She's going to be with us talking about research and treatment for stereotypy. Stereotypy is the proper term when you'll hear people talk about stimming or self-stimulatory behavior. That always used to really tick me off, because what they're talking about is stereotypy. And when they talk about stereotypical behaviors, they're talking about stereotypy, not stereotypical like we're stereotyping autism and it looks like this, this, and this. Stereotypy are behaviors that, repetitive behaviors that people on the spectrum will do that in some cases stimulates them and in other cases calms them down. This was my problem with the term self-stimulatory, because my son would engage in these behaviors as a soothing mechanism. You know, when you see a child rocking, it's because it's soothing to them. For some kids, flapping hands is soothing. For other kids, it's stimulating. Being able to see your hands go by in a blur is more interesting than staring off into space. And if you're feeling anxiety, sometimes it's something to take your mind off of whatever your stomach is worrying about. We see that there are a whole bunch of stereotypical behaviors that will go hand in hand with autism. So Angela Persicki is going to be with us talking about, from a research standpoint, what kinds of research are being done, have been done, and what treatment is effective in dealing with stereotypical behaviors, stereotypy. Sometimes it's a child looking at things out of the corner of their eye, you know, when they get this gaze going. It could be toe walking, all those different things. Angela is going to talk to us about some really practical ways. You know, One of the things that I want to say, though, is that I'm 100% sure she's going to be talking to us about giving replacement behaviors. We never want to think in terms of just ripping a behavior out of our kids' repertoire and expecting to be successful without putting a replacement behavior that is more acceptable in its place, right? Because you can't just eliminate behavior. It doesn't go poof, it'll come back. You might be able to, and this is where a lot of us go wrong in our lives, right? You know, that you can do something for a week, right? Because you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. You can do something for 2 weeks that you don't have to do for the rest of your life. But what things are you going to keep up for the rest of your life? Things that are reinforcing. And if you're doing a behavior that's very reinforcing to you, and you say, I'm not going to allow it to be reinforcing anymore, and you rip it out and don't put something replacement in, you're going to do well for a little while, and then you're going to be back to doing the behavior, right? Isn't that what's happened for you? It's what's happened for me. So we can't expect anything different for our children. So I'm sure she's going to be talking to us about replacement behaviors that help to soothe the child. Because we don't want to just say, oh, we're taking this away. You got nothing to soothe yourself now, right? That'd be horrible. We're not going to do that. Or nothing to stimulate you. We're not going to do that. We're going to give replacement behaviors, but she's going to talk to us about how we do that, what's effective, what we know from research, and how we can go about implementing strategies to make that happen. So that'll be really exciting. Then, as I mentioned, we're not going to be here on Friday or all of next week because I am going to be out of town taking some vacation. By the way, one of you just wrote in, and I want to go back to that site on autism-live.com. It was actually before the interview. Somebody wrote in and said, hi Shannon, sorry if you already mentioned, but I would like to know if you had any shows between June 29th and today, July 11th. In Blip TV, the last episode uploaded was the one broadcast on the 29th. Thanks. There's a very good reason for that, and that's because our wonderful technical director, Emily Goodwin, was away on vacation, and while she was away, we were still doing shows. It's the first time that we've done that, but we're fairly new around here, and you will see that some of those episodes will now, in the coming week while I'm gone, be uploaded to Blip TV. So you will see that we did do shows then, and you will see them start to come down the pike now that Emily is back today, just in time for me to go away. So hopefully while I'm away next week, she'll have time to, hopefully, there's a lot to do around here, right? So, oh, Emily says she's already got it under control. She's already, of course she is, because she is MacGyver and Martha Stewart in one very small redhead. So that is the way that works. So you should start to see some of those episodes coming up on Blip TV today and tomorrow and into next week. So thank you to Emily. Thrilled to have you back. We loved Matt. Matt was wonderful, but thrilled to have you back. Also want to remind you that there are so many ways, even as this show ends, there are so many ways for you to be in contact with us and to continue the conversation. Love that you're watching us on Blip TV. But want to remind you that you can always email us, right? No matter where you are in the world, no matter what time of day or night it is where you are, email us. We'll be happy to look at your email the next time we're in the office. On the next available live show, we will answer the question and hook you up with experts, and we will also send you a typewritten response or a link to the video when we answered your question. We appreciate your patience in getting back to you because we're a little bit backlogged at the moment. In any case, you can also phone into the studio. If we're live, you can ask to be patched into the studio. If we're not live, you can leave us a message if we're not in. But there are lots of times people standing by to take your phone call because we do want to be here and help and support you. Want to remind you also that you can Skype in with us. We really love it when you guys Skype in and tell us your opinions, suggestions, thoughts, concerns, and ask your questions of the experts that we have on the show. You can also be talking to us on Facebook. We have a new page, Autism Live. We love it when you like our page and interact with us and with other people on the page. We find it very reinforcing, to use some jargon terms. And we love how you guys are interacting with us on Twitter. And I'm getting better at it. So there is that. Also want to remind you, as this viewer reminded us, there are lots of ways for you to watch the show. You can be watching us on Blip TV. You can be watching us on YouTube. You can be downloading free episodes, the full free free episodes on iTunes. That is another way that we're available to you, and also on Ustream. So lots of ways for you to watch the show. We hope that you will participate in the show. Also want to remind you, if you have questions tomorrow, if you're not going to be with us tomorrow and you know that this author is going, Richard Strip is going to be with us, Mommy, I wish I could tell you what they did to me in school today, you can write in during the night and we'll get your questions and we'll answer them during the live show and send you the link to the live show. And we will also have Angela Persicki with us talking about how we can appropriately deal with stereotypical behavior, stereotypy, and research having to do that. I'm excited that we'll be with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. and I'm excited to be vacation afterwards. But until tomorrow at 9 a.m., please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.